so easy.
He had misunderstood my appointment, and I didn't realize you all were before me. So I'm sure what happened was he figured he'd heard enough. Want to hear the next person in line?
Lovely.
He and I had
Okay, good afternoon. It is 2:05 on Tuesday, November 14th, and I will call this school board briefing meeting to order. Board members, we have some executive service presentations today on quality and continuous improvement under academic services, science and inventors fair, and quality improvement plan for Head Start and Early Start, and a discussion on optimum school size and employee benefit plans for 2018-19 and public comment. Let's begin our meeting with quality continuous improvement, Dr. Carlin and Mrs. McClung.
Now we can't do the folder like we did. It's not showing up.
Where did you find it?
I went to the website.
Okay.
Do you like me? A little.
Then that is what I will do.
Oh. I have to debrief with Mr. Davis. Oh, good, Mara's here.
She's in the 7th grade now. Well, this says November 1.
Yes,
That was my problem.
that's
So
what we're doing is we're going to the website.
Yeah.
So go to the other one.
well, no, yeah, I'm going to the website.
Where are we?
She can show you what's wrong.
It's not showing up in the board agendas like it normally does.
It just comes up the first for 11-1 instead of
I've seen
11-14.
today's.
Thanks. Okay, we are ready.
All right, we are all set. So good afternoon, board members, Dr. Atkins and Mr. Martin. Cindy McClung and I are pleased to be here with you today to provide you with an update on our school district's use of quality principles and practices. And we are joined by Dr. Robert Butts, principal of Mariner High School, and Mara Vertrees, principal of Diplomat Elementary, who are going to share some examples of how the quality practices are incorporated at their particular schools in their work with students and staff. So we're going to begin where all good teachers begin, just a review to go back to history. We're going to begin by taking a look at the history of quality and continuous improvement in our district. So as you know, the school board adopted a policy and a philosophy of quality and continuous improvement 10 years ago via Board Policy 1.08. However, the roots of quality go back even further, back to the 1990s, when we had site-based decision-making schools, and Dr. Atkins remembers those times, as do many of us who served in those schools, either as teachers or administrators. These school teams did a great job looking at data and looking at the practices within their school, and then working hand in hand to improve outcomes for students through the work of action teams. In addition, as you know, Vision 2020, specifically Goal 4, has kept the focus on making continuous improvement our district's way of work. From 2011 to 2016, we were incredibly fortunate to have a very special grant, as you see on the screen, the NEA Foundation's Closing the Gaps Through Choosing Excellence grant, in partnership with both the Foundation for Lee County Public Schools and the Teachers Association. And I see Mark here and Marshall here. Just would like to thank them both for their tremendous support of this grant, and we could not have done it without their partnership, so thank you. This grant, which provided over $1.25 million in funding over 5 years, focused on the achievement gap and closing that gap among all of our students. It's based on the Glazer and Sterling models. An initial implementation occurred within 10 of our schools, and I'm going to share those with you. You don't have to write them down, they'll be on the next slide, but I do want to recognize those schools for being our initial implementers. So Challenger Middle, East Lee County High School, Fort Myers High, Fort Myers Middle, Manatee Elementary, Mariner High, Patriot Elementary, Pinewoods, Tropic Isles, and last but not least, Veterans Park Academy for the Arts. In year 4 of the grant, the work expanded to 20 schools, and then in year 5, the final year, expanded to 30 schools. Before I turn it over, I just want to say on a personal note that I was really proud to be the principal of one of the pilot schools, one of the initial schools, and that's Pinewoods Elementary. And the reason for that was it had a significant impact on the way in which we worked as a team with our staff and our students. We use data, especially disaggregated data, to drive improvement throughout our school. We restructured programs and our master schedule to provide even more levels of support for our students. Students were also engaged in conversations about not only their data, but their progress, individually and as classes. And our teachers were in grade level meetings, not just talking about the routine work, the stuff of grade levels, but we really looked hard at our data and started to change the way we practiced at our school. That is a result of this grant, and I'm really proud to tell you that that work continues today. So on that note, I'm really pleased to turn the presentation over to Cindy McClung, who is our coordinator and our champion in our district for quality and continuous improvement. Cindy.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Yeah, I believe it's on. Thank you. So good afternoon, board members and Dr. Atkins, Mr. Martins. I'm very happy to be here to update you on this. So we've started back in September with this update, and along with Irma and several other things, we're finally getting to you. So very excited to be here. We had 3 objectives to the NEA Foundation Grant. So, and I should say, you will hear more about quality than just the grant, but we felt it was really important to provide you with history of where we've been over the past 5 years. So you see the 10 schools there. Our first objective was to increase the effectiveness of teachers, because we know that teachers have the largest impact on student achievement. When we ended the grant after 5 years, you can see the percentage on the right-hand column is the percentage of teachers who were rated as effective plus the percentage of teachers who were rated as highly effective. And down at the bottom, there's the district average. 9 of those 10 schools were ahead of the district average at the end of the 5 years. So I did have a question earlier today from someone asking, well, did they improve over time? So I went back and looked at some data, and it's not here, but I will send it to you later. And every one of the schools did increase the percentage of effective plus highly effective teachers over that 5-year period. So if you look at Challenger, in fiscal year 12, their percentage was 94%, so they increased 6%. East Lee County was at 89%, went up to 98.3. Fort Myers High School was at 98. That's probably the lowest percentage there, but they made some big gains in other areas. Fort Myers Middle went up from 95 to 100%. Manatee actually went down 0.2%. And as you can see, they're the one school that did not make quite the gains that we saw in some of the other places. So that was the one school that was slightly off. Mariner High School went from 95 to 97.6. Patriot, 98 to 100%. Pinewoods, 92 to 100%. Tropic Isles from 90 to 98.6. And VPAA from 97 to 99.1. So again, I will share those numbers with you in writing.
Thank you.
Our second objective was to increase learning for all students. So looking at proficiency, were students more proficient? And we looked specifically at subgroups because the goal was to decrease that gap between our subgroups. Back when we had AYP many, many years ago, the government defined specific subgroups for us. Those weren't chosen by us. They're government-defined subgroups. So we looked at each of 10 different subgroups within the schools, and we looked to see, did they increase their proficiency in math and reading over time? When we got ready to add 10 more schools in year 4 of the grant, we said, well, this is a really good time to see. We've been in 3 years. Are we making some progress? So we looked at those subgroups in the schools that have been in the grant for 3 years. We compared their trend data to the schools that were just coming into the grant. So those are the bars that you see. The green bar is the schools that have been in there for 3 years. In math, 79% of the subgroups in those schools had a favorable trend data. They had made gains in proficiency. In the schools just coming in, only 50%. Those schools had not had any training, had not been part of the grant. When you look at reading, it was 64% of the subgroups that had already been in training, made favorable trends, 43% of the new schools that had favorable trends. So we felt like we were making some good progress there. At the end of the 5-year grant, oh, I'm sorry, let me go back. We also wanted to look at that same time, not just at were they getting better proficiency-wise, but also were the gaps decreasing, because that was also part of our goal. So we looked at those same subgroups. In math, 55% of the subgroups had a smaller gap between the subgroup and the white subgroup, as compared to 37% in the new schools, and in reading, 65% had decreased that gap as compared to only 27% in the new schools. So again, we felt like we were making some good progress. At the end of the 5 years, we looked at the schools that have been in for a minimum of 2 years. And really, if you look at research, they say it takes 3 to 5 years to make substantive change. But we went ahead and looked 2 years because we felt like we'd put some real resources there. Of those subgroups, 81% of the subgroups in math had made progress better than the district average. 72% in ELA had made progress better than the district average. So the following slides are going to show you some of the work that was done in the schools to get these results. And it always starts with just building the culture. What is it that's important to each school? So we started off with mission, vision, and values. Did that at the whole school level. Then teachers went back and worked with their departments or grade levels to develop ones that were specific to them, and then took it to the classroom level where students developed mission statements to explain why they're in school and what they're doing there and what is their purpose for being in school every day. We started doing that at Tropic Isles because when we would ask children, why did you come to school today? We would get all kinds of answers, and very few of them had anything to do with learning. And remember, I taught kindergarten for a long time, so I tell people I got the best answers. Oh, yeah. I'm 5. I get to come to school now. I like to ride the school bus, but my all-time favorite was, my dad's really tired of paying for childcare. So when we started talking to kids about, why are you really here? We do an all-call in the morning and say, okay, your teacher's going to talk to you about what you're going to learn today, because we always come to school to learn. And at the end of the day, what did you learn in school today? Because you know when your kids come home from school and you say, what did you do in school today? What's the answer? Okay, so we don't know that that changed, but at least they were getting a reminder before they left. Here's what you did in school today, here's why we're here, and here's what we learned today. We used a variety of quality tools. You see there's a consensogram talking about how often do I study my math facts. There's also a PDSA that was at one of our middle schools, and then you'll see one of our high school teachers from Mariner High School, Ryan Arciera, there showing a plus delta. And the people in that picture that he's explaining that he's telling about his plus delta are actually board members from the NEA Foundation who visited the school there last year. To me, it's all about helping children own their learning. Mm-hmm. So we started out at the class level, and if children need to know this, then their teachers have to be able to explain it. So it starts out with setting classroom goals. So set the goals, develop action plans, and then monitor your progress toward those goals along the way. So you'll see there's a graph looking at progress. You'll see action steps. What's your plan of action? Some questions for them. What strategies are you going to use? And then every week, as students would get new data, teachers will talk to them about this and see how they're doing. Once you have it established at the classroom level, it goes down to the individual student level. And so teachers were helping students develop their own individual data folders, set their goals there, develop their action plans, and then reflect on the learning. Because it doesn't matter what great goals you set and what action plans you do. If you don't follow them and if you don't reflect on the progress, then you're not going to get very far. One of my favorite pieces is StudentLed Conferences. This gives the students the opportunity to talk with their parents and explain their learning. And we had a really great response. Elementary schools tend to do this more frequently. During the grant period, we had Challenger Middle School started. They did it 1 year with 2 classrooms. By the next year, parents were saying, hey, we want to do this too. And then Mariner High School was our very first high school to implement student-led conferences. So really getting people involved, getting our parents in there. You heard Denise mention that we used a model that was based on the work of Dr. William Glazer and the Sterling criteria. Most of you are pretty familiar with our Sterling criteria work, but not so much with Dr. Glazer's work. Dr. Glazer has a model for quality schools. It's based on his choice theory model, which is just how and why people behave, his explanation for that. One of the things that he believes is that all people have basic needs. 4 of those are psychological needs, which you see up there: belonging, power, freedom, and fun. And that everything we do is in order to satisfy one or more of those needs. So when you start talking with children and helping them understand how and why they are making certain choices, it really gives them the knowledge that they have the chance and the opportunity and the choice to change what they're doing and how they're performing in school, both academically and behaviorally. Dr. Glazer has a specific questioning process that we use. It can be used for academics or for behavior. Ask 4 basic questions. What is your goal? What it is that's important to you? What do you want? The most basic level. Then what are you doing right now to make that happen? The very most important question, the Dr. Phil question, how well is that working for you? but not said quite that way. But helping children evaluate and adults evaluate, is what you're doing right now really helping you achieve those goals you said were important to you? And if they are, that's wonderful. You keep doing it. And if they're not, then what is it that you need to do differently in order to be successful? Here's an example of the questions. The student reflection questions on the left are ones that are on the data walls for students to reflect on how their personal progress compares to the classroom progress. And then on the right, this came out of a student notebook. This was their individual data folder answering those same questions. After 5 years, our grant came to a close. There were 20 other districts around the nation that were also part of this grant. The National Education Association Foundation chose Lee County to host the closeout because they were so pleased with the work that was done here. So we started out with a grand welcome from the Fort Myers High School band, and we got really good feedback on that. People were excited to see them. Melissa Harris Perry was our MC. She's nationally known, used to be on MSNBC, now works with Duke University. We showcased our arts. One of the schools that was represented was Fort Myers Middle, and they were showing off their dance group. And then our keynote speaker was Michael Fullen, who is world-renowned as one of the leaders in thoughts around change leadership. So we were very honored to have that opportunity to have them here, and had a great celebration. In fact, some of you were just coming on board, I believe, had just been elected last year as we were finishing this up. So we've put a lot of work into this. We have seen some really good results. And we have 2 people here with us today to tell you about their personal experiences with it. We were able to steal Dr. Butts out of Nissel for a few minutes, so we're going to ask him to go ahead and go first so he can sneak back into Nissel. And then we'll have Mrs. Vertrees tell you about her experiences.
By the way, thank you for allowing me to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity. Nissel's awesome. I just thought I'd throw it out there, by the way, so I do need to hurry up and get back in there before I miss anything else. But as far as what we've been able to do at Mariner High School and what quality tools have done, and let me start by saying I'm no expert on quality. There's so much depth that goes into quality that I don't know if you can ever reach the bottom of it. But for us, it's a culture. It's a change of culture that I had an opportunity to be a teacher at Mariner High School and then become an assistant principal. As I came on as an assistant principal, that's when the grant started. So we began it, and I watched the culture of the school change because of quality, because it's a breakdown of the processes and procedures that are either hindering us from being able to grow, or it shows the strengths of what we do as well. We went through CSI Lee, which is basically you have a group that comes onto your campus from other other schools, administration, as well as teachers, that break down what we do as far as our processes and procedures. And that's a powerful tool because you break down everything that you're doing as far as students, teachers, outside organizations. Are we truly getting done? Are we getting the best bang out of our buck on our campus? And that was powerful for us to take a look at. But then what was even more powerful for us was we took a group to go on to another campus. We went out to East Lee County to see the things that they do as well, and stole shamelessly from them as well as when we went out there. And then we went through CSI Lee 2 also, which is a more in-depth Sterling look at the processes and procedures for what we do. And people talk about, and I have heard some negative things throughout the district from other administrators about, Sterling and the negative language around that, but it's not something that you do. It's who you are. And when we look at everything that we do and we break down the processes and procedures through the Sterling process, then we're able to grow and expand on what we do. We find out where we are weak in data. Through the process, we've integrated what we call MAP, which is a time period that is set aside every two weeks, which is a 30-minute time period of just mentoring. It's our teachers take that time and that opportunity to be able to sit down with all of their students one-on-one, have conversations with them about where they are, what they need. Do they need to contact a teacher? Do they need to talk to their parents at home? What are their plans for graduation? It's goal setting. It's where they are with their own data. They break down their data and see where they are and what they need to do, and they're having that conversation, those one-on-one conversations with their students. And that came out as a result of us analyzing where we were, and we found out that we're not having those conversations with the students like they need. So those conversations were very, very valuable for our students. So that comes out of that, as well as the classroom mission statements, the data chats that we have with the students, data chats with our teachers as well. We didn't have data chats with our teachers, but our teachers needed to realize where their students were as well, so that they're breaking down what they're doing with the lowest 25%. So again, if I look back on what we did through that grant, it was an entire culture change of breaking down our processes and procedures for what makes Mariner High School what we are and who and what we do. Because I don't know who it was, I think it was Ben Franklin said, if you keep doing the same thing over and over and over again and expect different results, that's the definition of insanity. So, and it is. So you keep doing the same thing over and over and expect different results. That is insane. So that's a culture change that we've been able to do. Before the grant ended, we were at 100% of our teachers that were trained in it, and now we've been able to maintain it a little bit by bringing Cindy on board. Cindy's come to our campus and trained our teachers in the questioning process, because the biggest thing that we were neglecting as far as teachers are concerned is feedback. And again, that comes from breaking down our processes and procedures. So the feedback is huge for our students, and we've been able to maintain that just through little things here and there by bringing Cindy and others on our campus. So it's big for us. It's who we are. It's what we do on our campus. It's not something that we just do. That we do. It's who we are. So.
Since I know you need to go, if you have any questions for Dr. Butts before he leaves.
Questions? Well done.
Thank you. Great job.
That's impressive.
That was too easy.
Steve, do you have a question?
Yeah, just a comment. Thank you, Dr. Butts, for your explanation and for your support and belief of the quality system. Lee County school system, back in the day, in the 2006 through 2010, was really big, and education was just now starting to get into the Sterling, and Sterling is just the Florida version of the Malcolm Baldrige, which is nationwide, and it is in every industry across the world. And it was funny that in 2009 we were completing. As 2008 we started to see more and more academics be inserted and having programs that had to do that at the Florida Sterling Award. And then in 2009, when we were competing, when Tropic Isles actually won the Sterling Award, they weren't competing against other schools. They were competing against TRW. I remember, I believe it was. I can't remember, one of the automotive companies, subsidiaries were competing, and we beat all those in education. And I will send to you the entire board, but in October of 2010, Dr. James Short from our district actually wrote his dissertation thesis, and it was titled the relationship between the Sterling Quality Framework and student achievement in one Florida school district, and that be us. So I'm glad to see that it came back and that more and more emphasis is being put in that with our district, and I'm really pleased that, because it only matters, we can preach it till the day comes home and this whole board is behind the quality initiative, and we've got some on this board that are really supportive, but we all are. But it doesn't really matter how much we're into it until the culture changes, until the principals embrace it and their faculty embraces it, and it goes to the class level where the students do it as the way they do business, and not just for a particular year, but as a culture change, that this is how Lee County is going to go forward. So when I see what's going on in Mariner, it's great, because you're walking the walk and you're talking and you can see the difference in the school, the transformation is taking place, and so I really thank you for what you're doing and keep doing it. So
Thank you.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes. Mariner High is a happening place. Thank you, Dr. Butts, for a job well done. I don't think I missed it, but I know that you do something with your teachers in the way of feedback. You have conversations with them periodically. Did you mention that in your presentation?
I did not, and that's really the result of the grant as well, showing me as the principal that one of the areas that I needed to improve was to get the feedback from my teachers. So at the end of each year, actually it's the end of the third quarter, I go to each teacher's classroom during their planning period, sit down and just have a conversation. And I ask them a couple pointed questions about, whatever our initiative was during the year, but the most powerful question that I ask them for the feedback for us is, what can we do better at Mariner High School? And a lot of the change that we have progressing to the next year comes from those teachers. That increases their buy-in. They're the ones that are on the front lines. They're the ones that are with the students every day, and they're the ones that feel empowered when they give me that feedback, because if I just took that feedback and tossed it in the trash, then that doesn't do anything. Yeah. But when I take that feedback and I show them the changes that we're making because of what they're telling me, that's the power, and again, that's the process. That's the power in the process. So yes, I do that at the end of each, well, it's not at the end, it's the end of the third quarter.
Right, and that is powerful, because they feel valued and appreciated, and I think are motivated to work even harder.
Absolutely.
So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Any other board members? Thank you, Dr. Butts. Thank you. We'll look for the next chapter, next level.
So now we're going to go to the other end and look at our elementary schools and Mrs. Vertrees.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm a principal at Diplomat Elementary School, which is in the North Cape, and I just want to start by saying we're just starting our 4th year of quality, so we still have a long way to go, but I want to talk about how quality impacts the whole school. One of the first things we do is we really learn how to use data in a different way, and data can impact student achievement when it's used to inform instruction. So that's a huge and important piece. It impacts behaviors at your school. At our school, it really helped us build parent involvement, and it helps with teacher effectiveness. It also helps build a whole school feeling. Like when Dr. Butts was saying, it's who we are and it's our culture. Sometimes when you're in a big school, we're in elementary, not a high school, but we're still a very large school. We have close to 1,000 children, and you kind of start getting into your little silos and your pockets. Quality helps bring you all together and have a whole school vision, which I think is essential to success. So first of all, I became the principal 5 years ago. And Diplomat was known as a great school, great scores, wonderful place to be. People wanted to come there. So when I went to Cindy and said, can I get on the quality grant? She's like, why does Diplomat want to get on the quality grant? I said, because being here in my first year and looking closely at the data and at the school culture, one of the things I could see was that we are what they call in the book Good to Great, a sleeping giant. We're a big school. We do okay. We do good. But are our grades going up? Are our scores going up? No, they're going down or they're stagnant. Are we seeing a demographic change? A huge demographic change. A lot of people don't realize we're up to 50% minority at our school. Our economically disadvantaged grows every year. If you look at the A schools, we are one of the elementaries that is higher in that category. Not the highest by any means, but we're certainly, other Cape schools have like 36% minority. So I could see the changes that were coming to us, and I knew I had great personnel, but they had to be ready to deal with this. They had never really looked closely at student data. They had wonderful meetings talking more about some of the things we're going to be doing in the classroom and the performance, but not digging into some of that data. And as we saw our population changing, I knew we needed to get there. So I was like, Cindy, please, please. And somebody dropped out of the second round, and she said, okay, go girl. So, so we did, and we started to train our teachers. And what we found was that, first of all, they were startled looking at some of when we started digging in at data and looking at where we were and what we needed. And they were able, it's so much better than doing a top-down of me being the principal and going, we got to do something about science. It's so much better when they come to me and say, we got to do something about science. Then we're working together. Quality did that for us by looking at it in that quality way, plus just the collaboration and the buy-in in teachers at meetings using tools like consensograms and plus deltas. Suddenly we became a much more collaborative whole. I think that's very important. I talk about behavior. We use the Glazer model of needs. Teachers have needs wheels, or some, they're so creative, have trays or all these things. But by using a needs wheel with children at this age, children can kind of clue you in if there's a problem. If a teacher sees somebody on, a need for survival for a couple of days, we're talking to that child. We need to know what they need. Also, just by introducing that, my younger grades, they read this book about Chrysanthemum, a girl who has certain needs. By introducing that to the children, they know we care. And we know that the sooner we can build relationships to children, especially struggling learners, the more they are going to be able to achieve. They need to know somebody cares. Some of our most struggling learners don't have a parent at home that says, how'd it go today? Whether they're going to hear nothing or not, they don't ask those questions. But our teachers, by building those relationships and quality, helped them. Many of them were already doing it, but it brought some to a new place when it came to relationships. Parent involvement. We started StudentLed Conferences. We did our first one, our first year of quality. About 80% of our parents came. They were mystified. The kids are leading this. Now in KM1, we still have the teacher in the room because those kids need a little help, and the teachers do too, but by second grade, we have one teacher overseeing 4 rooms. Those kids are telling the parents what they're doing, where they're falling behind, what they need to do better in, how they're going to get there. That is amazing. It also leads to growth mindset. This is something I think is so important. When kids can talk about their data and know where they are, and what we teach them is you're not there yet. Because if kids who struggle or get an F, then they're like, I'm a loser, I'm done. No, not at our school. And that's because of the quality processes that we use. From that parent involvement and those student-led conferences, suddenly we didn't have a PTO. I now have a PTO that is sometimes a little too interested. They're very, very involved with our school. And that's good, though. It's good. We love having parents on our campus and being part of who we are. And then again, teacher effectiveness. And I think this is really important because I know that, and Mark will talk to you about this, teachers worry about their evaluations at the end of the year. And you saw how those evaluations changed. Do you know why? Because I can pull up and I can show you highly effective, and I did this with my teachers, highlight the things that are highly effective that are exactly part of quality. Student data binders, it's right there. Talking to kids about their data, right there. Follow the practices, you're going to hit highly effective. Exactly. The mission statements that we use as our classroom rules, it's all right there, and it's with student cooperation. So the whole thing fits together in a beautiful way that I think has really helped us stay where we've been able to stay at Diplomat Elementary. And again, it builds a sense of a whole school and teamwork. So I can't thank Cindy enough for letting me jump on board. And I thank the school board and the district for bringing this to our district. I do hope we can sustain it. That's a little hard. We get new teachers, our school grows, and we never got everyone fully trained. In the first place, we only had, a certain amount, although we do have 2 of my teachers who are now our trainers. And I'll close it with a personal story of this one teacher. My first year there, VAM was the first year, and she did not have a great VAM rating, and she's a very caring person and was pretty upset. So we pulled her data and we looked at it in a different way. She got into it. She took the quality training. She has been a highly effective teacher ever since. She is one of my quality trainers. She is someone who other teachers go to for help, and she has developed some ways to look at data as far as standards that has been shared around the whole district. So one little simple thing, and it can make a huge impact on the life of the teacher and all those children she impacts. So again, thank you, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to share this story with you.
Thank you.
Board members? Ms. Fisher?
Well, I'll just say that I have observed at Diplomat, since I have a great-grandson who's a first-grade student there, and is on a field trip today to Broadway Palm to see Curious George.
Yes, Curious George.
And whatever, the Golden Meatball.
Something like that.
Anyway, talk about a growth mindset. I think it has definitely trickled down even to the youngest of children. And the anticipation and the active responsibility that he demonstrates every afternoon is really pretty amazing to me. His mom and her 3 siblings attended Diplomat Elementary years back, and it's a new Diplomat because we really are on the cutting edge. And I think that with your team approach and encouraging and empowering students to manage themselves, you really have more than a golden meatball there. So thank you so much for all you've done.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher.
Anybody else?
I just wanted to compliment you and your students on the wonderful job they did 2 weeks ago, singing the national anthem. I had a lump in my throat. That's very rare. They were fantastic.
They were.
So thank you. You should be very proud.
I am.
That was precious.
And I'd like to summarize and point out something that you just said that is so critical. You know, teachers work pretty much isolated in their classrooms, and it's tough for them to really feel a part of the whole. And when you center your conversations with them around a topic that we're all learning and we're all improving, that's when they become involved, and they become, you know, when I saw the percentages of highly effective before and after, it isn't always that you moved more highly effective teachers in. Teachers, when they're recognized and supported and they feel that they can grasp onto something that they can do better and that they're not always being criticized, and I'm not saying that our teachers are always being criticized, but they have something to hold on and they're supported, that's when they become highly effective. So while our focus was on student achievement, the outgrowth is that everybody gets better along the time with this process. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mom.
And thank you for your indulgence. I know we are over time, so I will go through rather quickly, but I do want to bring you up to date on what's happened since the grant, because although the grant is over, quality in the district is stronger than ever, and I truly believe that. The first place we continue the work is through the Collegium for the Advancement of Education. Thank you, Uncle Marshall. You're not really my uncle. Okay. The work that has been done there, I was a Golden Apple teacher in 1993. I attended the Collegium that summer, and that was the first year that quality processes were taught at the Collegium. I am so proud to say that for the past 10 years, I've been able to actually do the presenting with our consultant, and last year without our consultant, doing Choosing Excellence for 10 years at Collegium. And the ability to bring that to so many teachers, generally 30 teachers a year, the best and brightest teachers we have in Lee County, is just amazing. So thank you to the foundation. It's been a wonderful experience for me personally, but also for many, many teachers in our district. If you haven't had a chance to come out, you should pop in next spring or next summer. We're also continuing the work in schools. You heard Dr. Butts talk about Mariner at the beginning of the year. He had me come in during preschool and do a refresher. He specifically asked for the questioning process. When we do our evaluation after training, 97% of teachers say that's the most important thing they learn because they can go back and use it in their classroom immediately and also in their personal lives. So it's always a great experience to hear what people learn when they come out of the classroom. Mirror Lakes Elementary was not part of the grant. However, they did ask for training when Rob Cooper went there because he had been part of the grant. So they're continuing their work. And Lee Virtual School this year for the first time received 2 days of training at the beginning of the school year. We've also, out of that, tried to find ways to get bits and pieces in because it's an 18-hour training. We don't have 18 hours very often to be able to do this. So we've pulled one piece out called Building a Culture of Excellence, and this year we've had 3 schools go through that so far, Mirror Lakes, Veterans Park, and Allen Park Elementary School. We also began in earnest work with our departments. We are so focused on the schools as we should be. However, the people in this building are so important to the success of the schools. So for the first time in a long time, I believe we have very well-defined department improvement plan goals. The operations division over the summer said we really want to get together and make sure that we are in alignment. They took 2 days. They worked on their culture, their mission, their vision, their values, and on their goal setting. We've also had work with the Professional Development and Leadership Department, brand new department, so it was nice for them to get started, and our Communications and Productions Department. And here's some pictures from our operations this summer. At Central Leadership this summer, we carried the strategic planning piece into the afternoon, and every department within this building had the opportunity to talk about where are they in comparison to where they need to be, set some goals, develop some action plans, and talk about how those would be deployed. As I said, we have department improvement plans. We had a minimum of 3 goals. We gave areas of business, so that's, what is the work that you do within your department, a customer service goal, because we believe that we need to deliver excellent customer service, and a goal around the workforce, not the workforce out in the schools, but the workforce within the departments. So they had some choices there. And then every department was also asked to consider, what are we doing to support our Tier 3 schools this year? So you had some Tier 3 goals as well. As part of those goals, every department set key performance indicators, or KPIs. Those today, anybody out there? Today at 5 p.m. is the due date for our first quarterly or our monthly KPIs. So I know a lot of people have been working on those. So when you set goals and you talk about improvement, then it's time to talk about how do you make those improvements. So we have provided some training. Back in 2015-16 over the summer, we had our first day of Yellow Belt training, and you can see the numbers there of the people who went through the Yellow Belt, and then 21 people also went on to Green Belt through our HR division. This past year, we were able to increase those offerings. We had 42 people through a 1-day certification, and we also had a Yellow Belt project, which was a 5-day training, had 4 different groups there. We have Green Belt, which will be finished November 28th. Either that or Santa Claus is bringing it in the bag because we need to get it completed. We've been working on that one really hard. We have new ones starting up soon, and Dr. Halstead earned a black belt last year. We are so excited for her. It was awesome work. We just this past week opened up we opened up one day Yellow Belt course. It filled within 4 hours. So we opened up a second one. It filled within less than 24 hours. So we have a lot of excitement out there around the work. Here's an example of the work being done in Greenbelt. You see the team members there, a combination from our transportation department, our planning and growth department, our operations division. Within the first 6 or 7 weeks of school, using the skills and some of the tools they had learned during Greenbelt, they saved the district over $500,000 in that little amount of time. So we are very excited about the work that's going on. And congratulations to them. CSI Lee County started several years ago as a way to help schools prepare for accreditation. We do have an accreditation visit coming up in spring of 2019, so we are getting people involved a little more urgently. You heard Dr. Butts talk about it, and although Mara did not mention it, her school will be going through CSI this year. You've seen the background materials. You see it's not just a simple little visit. It entails a lot of detail and a lot of hard work on both sides, but we're really excited about it. We just completed a needs survey, which is why we opened up some of our Six Sigma classes. We will continue working with Lean Six Sigma throughout this year. We also have plans to hold a kind of a celebration showcase. Thank you, lost the word. The showcase there for our teams to celebrate the learning that has occurred through these processes, and then our winning team will be sent to the Florida Sterling Conference. So we're still working with the Florida Sterling Council as part of our work with the Baldrige criteria. We'll be doing some more CSI Lee visits and continue to work with Dr. William Glazer's philosophies as we work with schools and departments. Okay. So I know that's a lot of information in a very, well, not as short as you would hope, but still a short period of time. So any questions that we can answer for you?
So thank you for getting the information about the increases from the beginning of the program to the end. I'm wondering if we could get information about whether there were changes in leadership at those schools and whether that had an impact on the increase?
Yes, ma'am. There were, in the 5 years, only 2 schools had the same leaders for 5 years. Okay. That was Fort Myers High School and Challenger Middle School.
And is there any way for us to extract from that whether the change in leadership had any impact on the increase in effectiveness or the population of effective and highly effective teachers?
I don't know, but I'll certainly work on that.
Okay, and then what is the demographic makeup of those schools? That would be helpful background information for me to have. And in terms of EDAC, I know you're in charge of EDAC now, so it might be helpful for this presentation to be given to them, along with a breakdown of each subgroup. Instead of putting all the subgroups together, showing EDAC the increases for each subgroup and asking them to brainstorm ways to increase for each of those subgroups. Just a suggestion. Yeah. The kind of thing I think they would really embrace and bring some good suggestions to the table. I'm really interested to hear Dr. Creel's take on this and how you see it being implemented moving forward in the district and the effectiveness and the usefulness of it in the district. And Cindy, we talked about the extra work this creates for teachers, and we as a board, part of our education revolution can be decreasing the number of state mandated requirements on our teachers to free up their time to do more useful things in the classroom like this. Yeah. So I'm embracing local freedom as part of our education revolution here in Lee County.
Thank you. And you heard Dr. Butts talk about the change in culture, and yes, it is different work for teachers. It is often perceived as more work because it's tough learning at the beginning, but as it takes the place of other things, it's not as much more as it's much different.
And it takes on a life of its own.
Yes.
Ms. LaRiviere and then Ms. Morgan.
And tagging on 2 things that Dr. Butts and Ms. Vertrees said is the fact there is a culture change. But I love listening to Ms. Vertrees when she said it happens at a grassroots, and bringing those grassroots in on the piece that needs to happen. And with regards to, it's a matter of helping the teachers get their heads around the fact that this is extra work, because in reality, it's just smarter work. And you think about things a little bit differently, and it engages you, and it challenges you, and it stimulates, which then helps with that energy level. So I really do see this as a positive win-win. As a teacher, I was in a school doing these things, but it wasn't a school that was doing this. So it's just great that they have that collaboration moving forward.
Ms. Morgan? Thank you.
So I have a question. First of all, Tropic Isles.
Yes, ma'am.
Does Tropic Isles still have the same culture?
I would say it has a different culture. I haven't been there this year, I will say that. I know they have a very different staff. They have a very young staff because a lot of their teachers have moved into other positions within the district. I know their focus is not the same as it was when Tropic Isles was on this journey.
And to me, that's the downside. The turnover has taken place, and the culture has changed as a result of it, rather than the culture being strong enough to change the people who are coming into work. So that's one comment. And the other question I have, and this may sound bizarre to somebody who's in education, but explain to me how Glazer, Sterling, and Covey are the same and different. It seems to me that some of our schools are investing in the Covey model, which really has some of the same elements that we do, that continuous improvement does. So is there a conflict, an overlap, a complement? I'm just
It's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of overlap. A lot of Covey's work is based on Glazer's philosophy, and he's quite open about that. He is very specific about his focus, which is different, where Dr. Glazer's focus is wider, I believe. When we look about Sterling, we're talking about tools that we use, and we're looking at areas, the 7 different areas of criteria, asking how do you do this and how do you know it's working, basically. Glazer is one of the how do you do this. So when you're working with students, how do you help students accept responsibility for their own actions and their own work? And Glazer gives you a model for doing that. Sterling gives you tools to show them the progress. When we first started at Tropic Isles, we were totally Glazer. We've been doing that for 2 years when the district decided to bring in Sterling. And our honest reaction was, hey, we have a quality model and we don't really need anything else. But we listened anyway. And it quickly became very clear to us that we knew we were doing good work, and we knew our children were getting better, but we didn't have a way to prove it. And Sterling, the Baldrige criteria, gives you the tools and asks the right questions to help you prove that what you're doing is working. Covey's work is very much aligned with that.
Thank you.
Board members? So what is the time frame now to move this into other schools? Do we have a step system that we bring on so many every year?
We do not at this time. We do not have that. We're still working on how to provide the time to teachers for this. As we mentioned at the last workshop, it's money's always an issue, but it's not really the funding. It's the finding the time, because it's a teamwork training, and it's very time intensive. So we're trying to find ways to get little pieces of it that make sense to go together. For example, when I go to Hancock Creek has agreed to be part of the CSI, and they've not had any of the training. So we're going to start out with the data piece, and we're going to spend a half day looking at how do you go from setting classroom goals to setting individual goals, and that's one piece of it. And then we're going to take a day later in the year to look at the relationship building piece, which is the Glazer piece. How do you help the students feel part of the culture of the classroom, and how do you really build that? So it's little pieces at a time. We're still working on how to really get it district-wide.
And it is somewhat of a funding issue. If we had the opportunity to pay teachers in the summer to come in and be part of that, that would make a difference.
It does help. Although what we have found in the summer is that you get a lot of cancellations. but it does help. It definitely helps. If the school has truly said this is what we're going to do, and far enough in advance, we get a good team in.
Good. Board members, Ms. LaRiviere and then Ms. Fisher.
Just an aside, if any of our members of our legislators are listening, it goes along with that PD, because I remember when people were signing up and begging to go to our summer institutes when we were able to pay them their hourly rate.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot to be said for providing those fundings so we can do quality professional development. And it's gone.
Yes.
Ms. Fisher?
So, as we have gone to these schools and established those cultures which are successful and rendering good results, what is the plan then to try to maintain and sustain those cultures through changes in leadership and staff? Because we always have people retiring and new people moving in. We're a pretty mobile district, so.
Yeah, great question.
Okay.
So with the, there's probably a multitude of approaches, but one approach that came to my mind was the implementation of the principal lead program, where we have a number of our principal leads that have had this training, that have, if you look at some of the schools, you can see many of them have led this work in their particular schools. And so now they have an opportunity to go next door, to go to 3 or 4 other schools, and to continue to talk about the importance and what are those first steps you take when you adopt this culture in your school. And also at the district level, we are modeling this through the use of Data Force, where our principals come in, especially our Tier 3 principals, and they're having conversations about, here's what my data say, and then these are the types of things that I need in terms of support, and then working with their principal leads to drive that down, including the classroom.
We also have a cadre that has gone through the training. You heard Mara say that she has trainers at her school, so she does have 2 trainers at her school. We have, I believe it's 14 people on that cadre who are able to provide training to schools upon request.
I just have one more quick question, and it has to do with NISL.
Yes.
As our principals and assistant principals are going through the NISL training, isn't this, not a whole part, but some aspects of this included within the NISL training itself?
Yes, absolutely. It's particularly Unit 2, where it talks about strategic planning and the processes you follow. So that is certainly an invitation. You know, we can talk more about that offline, but there are components of it for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Atkins.
Just one of the things as it relates to, just getting back to Mrs. Morgan's questions and comments, one of the struggles I think that we're having is making this deeply embedded in the culture. And, you know, this unfortunately had some rocky starts early on, you know, back when we literally, Ron Fraser asked the famous question, or made the famous statement, you know, Lee County, we put the Y in quality, and you're moving from that to quality the Lee County way. And we are not there yet. One of the most difficult challenges that I see is trying to connect CSI Lee to the efforts that we're making, you know, in the district office, and trying to make those connections so that you do not, because right now we have some different quality initiatives that are going on, and they're not necessarily, we're trying to connect them. And I think Cindy and Denise are doing an admirable job, but they're started in different times with different models, and we're trying to mesh those together in such a way that makes sense so that we can make it a part of our culture. If you look at what we are doing at the district office in terms of the district department improvement plans, which we'll hear about, I think that's a step in the right direction. But you know, professional development is absolutely key, and it's not just a funding issue, but it's also a time. You know, being able to take the time to provide the professional development that's necessary to truly take this whole initiative and make sure that every single person understands the use of quality tools, the use of Glazer, because we are still far away from that. And then making it sustainable, because if you look at our FSA results and you look at our schools that are involved in this process, it's not a total alignment. You have to look at other issues. It has to do with leadership. It has to do with the fidelity of the implementation at the particular school, because you have schools that are involved, but you do not see the results that you want to see. Other schools that are involved, and you see tremendous results. So, you know, there's all of these things that we have going on. We've started, but I think we're taking some good strides in that journey, but we still have a long way to go.
Other board members? Well, you know, if we call insanity doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, if we know where we get results and we don't do it, that seems to fall in a similar category. So I think we have to move as fast as we can to bring this to everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you. Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And now we're going to hear about our Science and Inventors Fair. Mr. Lee Hughes.
Good afternoon, board members, Dr. Atkins, Mr. Martin. My name is Lee Hughes, Program Administrator in our Intervention Department. But I also come before you today as a member of our Thomas Alva Edison Regional Science and Inventors Fair, which is a group that Dr. Gary Nelson and I co-chair. And so if I'm going to start this off right, I think I should start it this way. We're here today seeking 100% school participation in exchange for 100% equity. The largest pre-collegiate STEM competition program in Southwest Florida. And I hope you'll take an adventure with me. Just a little bit about us. We are the Thomas Alva Edison Regional Science and Inventors Fair Steering Committee. We are very unique. Just like Florida is comprised of 67 school districts, across the state there are 37 regional science fairs. And we are one of the only regional science fairs that actually utilizes a community steering committee to operate our Regional Science and Inventors Fair program. We're comprised of universities, colleges, community partners, businesses, as well as the school districts of Lee and Charlotte counties. Certainly, while there's some very, very nice prizes involved in the Science and Inventors Fair program, our mission and values are based on the educational experience. We pride ourselves in championing STEM opportunities, and also, in terms of quality, as we just heard in a great presentation, we look to offer a valued experience for not only our students, our teachers, but also our community partners. Many of you know that we're comprised of 3 core academic competitions. For 61 years now, we've held the Thomas Alva Edison Kiwanis Science and Engineering Fair. For 31 years, so that's much longer than Shark Tank, by the way, we've had the Thomas A. Edison Festival of Light Inventors Fair, which is a K-12 competition. It very much supports the entrepreneurial spirit, the inventiveness of our students, as well as their creativity. And our teenager is the 14th annual Suncoast Credit Union Elementary Science Expo. And the joke there is Suncoast has come on as our title sponsor this year. The event is also hosted at Suncoast Credit Union Arena on the campus of FSW. So Suncoast is paying their own rent. But most people know us as the fairs, but we're actually much, much more. We offer year-round mentoring in the form of summer camps, summer research opportunities. We provide students with access to upper-level professors where students go and conduct their research at regulated research institutes. We also provide scholarship and prizes that take students into those laboratories and into those trips and experiences that are not only at the state, national, but also international level. We've also developed quite a bit of a STEM ecosystem over the years. As I mentioned, Science Fair is 6 decades old, but we have well over 80 community partners who engage in some way, shape, or form with our Science and Inventors Fair program. We do span the Tri-County area. Collier schools have been known to participate in the Inventors Fair, but predominantly Lee and Charlotte County schools engage in the Science and Inventors Fair, as well as from time to time the Elementary Expo. I just want to highlight that for 61 years, the Fort Myers Kiwanis have been a title sponsor of Science Fair. And over the last 10 years, Kiwanis alone has donated over $150,000 to make sure that students arrive at state and international competitions.
Oh, nice.
Certainly Florida Gulf Coast and Florida Southwestern State College are key contributors, both in kind and support. And now we have both venues, the new arena at Suncoast Arena, as well as Alico Arena as host venues for our fairs. Sony Electronics, over the last 10 years, has donated over $200,000 in prizes that go towards many of our category and grand award winners. Also, I'd be remiss in not mentioning the Dates Family Foundation. The Dates family over the last 10 years has donated $130,000 to underwrite the summer research opportunity that takes place every summer at Florida Gulf Coast University. I do see Marshall in the crowd, so I want to acknowledge the foundation for their support. For the first time last year, the Edison Fairs offered their own student scholarships, and the foundation has helped us start that scholarship program. But we're not just about engaging our businesses and business partners in the fairs. We also do quite a bit to engage new partners and do fun community events. For example, right now, students at Fort Myers Technical College are helping us with a website build-out. We're doing more and more to automate the fair process through our website. So students at the Technical College are helping to build those registration forms and those dashboards, a la Castle, but the science fair version and STEM fair version. But we're working on the website to make it more intuitive, more user-friendly, but also more effective in a business capacity. Another thing we did last year was engage the Fort Myers Miracle, and they gave out a special award to some of our athletically themed projects. And those students were recognized on the field before a miracle game during what we called the Brains and Brawn at the Ballpark event. And we also have business partners such as Pure Florida, which is an ecotourism business. They give us special awards, $200 gift certificates, so students and their families can go out and explore our nature and hopefully be inspired with next year's projects. So just to give you a snapshot of where we stand on the state level, what I did here is I took the largest districts by school enrollment, and for those districts that send 28 or more projects, because that's the number of projects we'll be sending to State Science Fair this year, I thought I'd give you a gauge of where we stand on the state spectrum. If you notice, we fare pretty well when compared to Miami-Dade, Broward, Orange, Palm Beach, etc. I do want to add a side note that Broward County has a certain large science and engineering entity in their background, in their backyard. And because of that, because of the presence of NASA, they actually have 3 regional fairs that recruit 658 participants. So I would call that a mega district as far as STEM competitions. You'll notice the asterisk on our number, 352. If current school participation levels hold up, we are projected to have 476 projects at our regional science fair. That makes us now the 5th largest science fair in the state of Florida. If you were to combine the Inventors Fair, which is also that same weekend in January, and Elementary Science Expo participation in May, our regional Science and Inventors Fair program is larger than the state science fair program. State recruits 900 participants. We'll have over 1,100 student participants in this year's Science and Inventors Fair. Another term, and I apologize, I used an acronym here, but we've heard a lot this year and the last couple of years about return on investment. And you'll notice there's some hardware in front of us. That is one of 8 traveling trophies from State Science Fair. It's handed out to one of 8 Ying Scholars, and it resides in the school of the award winner for one entire year. So over the last 6 years, that trophy's been here in Lee County 3 times. Samantha Prabhakaran, Max Norleans of Fort Myers High School, and then most recently Jay Chandar have received that award. Okay. Historically, too, the students that engage in our science, inventors, and expo events, of all of those participants, on average, 55 to 65% of those students receive some form of recognition at the regional level. When our team is selected and goes on to State Science Fair, of the last 3 years, 65 to 75% of the participants we take to state receive some form of recognition. So I would say we have a very high quality fair as well as a very successful fair on the competition stage. And also, a little did you know fact, in 2000, our regional Science and Inventors Fair program had a national inductee into the National Young Inventors Hall of Fame. That was a young man by the name of Ryan Kingsbury. He was a senior at Fort Myers High School. So now I thought I'd call on some students to come up, as well as a teacher from our Science and Inventors Fair program, to provide for you some impact statements. A wise man once said, "I have not failed, I've just found 10,000 ways it didn't work."
Yeah.
Well, certainly these next people did not find ways that didn't work, but found ways that worked for them very successfully. And I'd like to call to the podium Mrs. Linda Bortring and Miss Grace Ryan to give a brief account of their experiences with our fair program.
Grace.
Welcome.
We all know Gracie.
Grace, good to see you.
Grace. Yes, she was with an introduction. I'm Linda Borchering. This year I'm teaching at the Alva School, and it has been my pleasure to be involved with the Science and Invention Fair for over 20 years now. It started as a teacher when I was at the Franklin Park Magnet way back when, and ever since I've had the pleasure of leading the elementary level fair at my school. I just want you all to know what an outstanding program it is that we have here in Lee County, and it's such a quality program that promotes creative thinking, problem solving, and applied learning. Our participating students are getting hands-on experiences with practice and preparation for 21st century skills needed today. In addition, this program increases family involvement, collaboration with others, and increases self-confidence in our students. As students work on their inventions and experiments, what's taught in class is put into practice. Real-life experience gives these students hands-on activities that they'll remember for a lifetime. Many of our students continue their interest after the science fair is over. We have students who participate in a local inventors group called the Gator Cage, which I believe is in Naples. We have students who continue the love of learning science in college, and their interest first began with that invention or experiment they did back in their elementary school fair. Besides the opportunity for the inventions and experiments, the impact is daily for the children. As a parent, both of my children were involved, and the experience helped them in a myriad of ways. As a teacher, it becomes a highlight for students every year during their academic careers, and we are just so fortunate to have this program here in Lee County. Thank you. Oh, Grace.
Hello, I'm Grace Ryan. I'm from the Alva School. I've had such a great experience with this Science Invention Fair because when I first heard of it, I was in kindergarten, and I told my mom, I have to do this. And I made it 5 out of 5 times to the regionals, thanks to Miss Borchering with all her help and support for me. I also think it helps you in the real world with research and public speaking. I love inventing and hope to be on Shark Tank one day. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace.
You are a woman on the move, definitely.
Keep a good one down.
Yes.
Thank you both.
Dr.
you,
Kuppel,
Grace.
can I just
Yes,
Can I
please.
just mention that Grace is a returning member of the School Board Student Advisory Committee?
Oh, good.
And we're thrilled to have her back again this year. Last year, in order to get input and feedback from all of the students at her school, she created a survey with an amazing grid of questions being answered by other students, and she categorized everything, so she is definitely an inventor. Thank you, Grace.
I'm impressed, thank
helped.
you, yeah. We better start making her a name tag. I
think so.
She'll be here any day now.
I think you'll find from these next few presenters that you'll have plenty of opportunity for student representatives. Next, I'd like to call forward Miss Morgan Barkhurst. Morgan is a graduate of North Fort Myers Academy for the Arts and currently attends Florida Southwestern Collegiate High School, but we won't hold that against her.
Hello, how are you all doing today?
Wonderful.
I'm in 9th grade at FSW Collegiate, and for the past 3 years, I've had the privilege of going to the Regional Science Fair competition, and every time I've enjoyed talking to my friends around me, talking to experts about projects that I've worked countless hours on, and I've enjoyed working with the scientific method. I think that it's a great way to learn real-world science as a young adult. And I got to compete at state for the past 2 years, and last year I was awarded first place in the chemistry division for my grade for middle school. And while the fair is much larger, I still have many friends from all around Florida that I'm still in contact with, that I really love the friendships and the people that you get to meet at Science Fair. Science Fair, while it's fun, it's also very beneficial for education purposes. I've won over $10,000 in scholarships from Science Fair alone. And not only that, but it's caused me to understand what I've been studying and apply it in classroom situations. From Science Fair, I've gained knowledge in statistics, quantum mechanics, physics, organic chemistry, and background knowledge is in all of the fields that I've studied. I've realized that as a kid, when I did Science Fair at Northrop Myers Academy at my middle school, the other kids started to hear about Science Fair and became more interested in it. And I think that's really great that students are able to influence other students in wanting to do these opportunities. And I now founded the Science and Inventors Fair Club at FSWC, which they had not had before until this year. And I've influenced other students there to participate. And hopefully next year we'll have a very big outcome of students that will participate in the regional fair. And I can't wait to see how the rest of my Science Fair story plays itself out.
Oh, thank you very much.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan.
And I do apologize with the modification in the agenda today. Mr. Leong and Mr. Chaudhry couldn't make it. They're actually at school turning in their extended essays for the IB program at Fort Myers High School.
Understood.
And next, I'd like to call forward Miss Dahlia Dry. Dahlia participated in her first science fair last year. She did okay. She made it to regionals, made it to state, and then made it all the way to International Science Fair, where she received 2 recognitions. Dahlia?
I'm a junior at Fort Myers High School, and I did my project this year on the use of various machine learning algorithms as well as statistical methods for time series analysis for the analysis of various hyperlocal weather trends, which basically means that I'm trying to improve the accuracy of local weather forecasts. I've always been really passionate about mathematics, and I am really fascinated by the way that science allows us to kind of resolve the chaos of the world around us into some really beautiful patterns. So my project this year was really a nice way for me to explore my passions and kind of get to really interact with them on a level of research that was like nothing I've ever done before. So I went to the regional fair, and I won Best of Fair as well as the Intel Excellence in Computer Science Award and a scholarship from the Southwest Florida Regional Technology Partnership. From there, I went to the state competition and won 3rd place in mathematics and computer science. And from there, I had the amazing opportunity to attend the Intel International Science Engineering Fair in Los Angeles, California. That was really one of the most amazing things I've ever been lucky enough to do. I competed against 1,800 students from around 75 countries, and I got to meet a ton of amazing people from all over the world, and competed in an amazing convention center right in downtown LA, and we got to go to Universal and do all sorts of fun stuff. So it was just an amazing experience, and I ended up winning 4th place in mathematics as well as a scholarship from Mu Alpha Theta, which is a national mathematics honor society. Overall, needless to say, Science Fair has been simply an amazing experience for me, and I know I'll definitely look back on this as the start of my career in scientific research, and I'm just incredibly grateful to people like Mr. Hughes and the Southwest Florida Kiwanis who have made this possible through, funding local science fairs and just making it possible for students like me to discover amazing opportunities in the local arena. So, yeah.
Well, congratulations to you, and we'll be looking forward to this year's event and more awards.
Thank you. Thank you.
Proud of you.
And Dahlia didn't mention it, but completely self-motivated, self-taught. She picked up a book last summer on coding, started learning how to code herself, and then turned that into a project. So
amazing.
Quite an amazing young woman.
Very impressive. Thank you.
Kudos to all of you.
So I mentioned earlier that certainly we're seeking community partners, and anyone who wants to give us some money, we won't deny it. But we want to give back to our community because we realize we're doing a great service for students, for their families, and for schools. But I think we can also do a better job of serving our greater community. So last year we coined the phrase, for 60 years our fairs have been a community event. Now we're giving back more to our community. And it started with a food drive. So we decided to partner with the FGCU Campus Food Pantry, which is a service provided to students who may need some assistance from time to time throughout the year. And we held our first annual food drive, and we raised over 131 pounds of food, non-perishable food donations. So we're going to do it again this year. We'll have our second annual food drive. It pits science fair against inventors fair to see who can raise the most non-perishable food items, but it all goes to a good cause, the campus food pantry. The other thing we're engaged in is an outreach project with steering committee members and the Quality of Life Center. We have several members who are providing HR assistance. They're in the process of advertising, recruiting, and hiring a STEM coach. And it's intended to be an after-school program. And so participants that go to that youth center will have an opportunity for after-school STEM activities, weekend STEM activities, and the mindset there, the objective there is to provide support so that more of those students can engage in our fair program, receive scholarship where needed, and not only enter the fair, but also get access to those summer camp opportunities that are part of our program as well. And that's something we're looking to expand upon to other centers throughout Southwest Florida. Also borrowing some phrases and catchphrases from Twitter, there's lots of opportunity ahead of us. So a rising tide lifts all boats. Some goals that we have as a steering committee this year is first and foremost to establish 100% school participation among Charlotte and Lee County schools. And I'm proud to say that as of today, we have engaged every high school in Lee and Charlotte County. We have engaged every middle school in Lee and Charlotte County, and we are 6 schools away from engaging every elementary school in Lee County.
Excellent.
We have 102 schools that will send students to either Science Fair, Inventors Fair, or Expo this year. That is remarkable. Just for context, 83 schools participated in last year's program and 70 schools the year before that. Another thing that we're looking to do is to be recognized as a STEM ecosystem. This is a program that's put on with the National Community of Practice. There are, I believe, 57 STEM ecosystems across the United States. There are just 2 in the state of Florida. So that application process will open up a little bit later this year. But we as a community organization are looking to apply and hopefully gain endorsement in that program by July of 2018. And our third goal is we've written a Honda grant with the Honda American Foundation. And the goal there is to secure funding for a summer camp, summer research opportunity for elementary students. So this would be our first entry into the elementary level, so we'd be looking to recruit rising 4th graders, soon to be 5th graders, give them a summer research opportunity at Florida Southwestern State College, and then track those students during their 5th grade year to see how well or how it impacts the Science and Inventors Fair program and those projects. We also have new to our district and new to the state of Florida, the Title IV Part A funding program, the entitlement program, which is a federal program. That program is entitled Student Support and Academic Enrichment. And some of the goals include improving instruction and student engagement in STEM, as well as improving access to social studies, environmental education, music, the arts, safe and healthy schools, and also access to technology. And you may have noticed on our district website and through email that there's currently a needs survey on our district website. We're asking for school and community input as far as where those monies should be directed and to which activities should be supported. So stay tuned for follow-up, I'm sure, on that topic. So just like Edison, our namesake, we hope to inspire students, schools, and stakeholders to observe, to explore, and to invent, because you never know where it will take you. And I want to introduce you to Sarah R. Langberg. Sarah is the last Intel ISIF Grand Award winner from our region, and that was in 2004. And since then, in her travels, Sarah retired from our local Science and Inventors Fair program, but she went on to Princeton University, where she achieved a bachelor's in public and international affairs. But that didn't stop her. Sarah went on to Yale, where she got a master's in environmental management, but that didn't stop her. Sarah went on to Yale Law School, where she got her doctorate, but that didn't stop her. Sarah is currently living in Anchorage, Alaska, where she is a commercial and environmental litigator. And I reached out to her. I was hoping to get a testimonial from her on LinkedIn, but unfortunately I have not heard back. But we believe, as a community entity, that we can return back to that grand stage. We have the students, we have the talent, we have the teachers, and we have the support. And I believe we're steps away from getting back to international presence and international recognition on a grand stage. Thank you for your time. Thank you for this opportunity. And I'm here to answer any questions if you have.
And we have Mr. Lee Hughes, who has led the whole process on this, and we certainly wouldn't be where we are today without you. So thank you for all your work over the years, and you continue.
Well, thank you. It's not just me. We have quite a team of community members, school members. We are working very hard behind the scenes to put these programs on, and we appreciate doing so.
Just that it has come a long way. Not that I was there when it originally started 60 years ago, but when you were still a sparkle in your daddy's eye, I remember being part of the science fairs, and they always took place at Terry Park during the same time, not as the Edison Pageant of Life, but we always coordinated around the fair. And it's amazing to see how far things have come and how we really do see the whole community coming alongside and backing it up. So thank you to you. Please share with the steering committee how much we appreciate all that they do and for stimulating the kids. It's amazing.
Mr. Hughes, would you introduce the other folks that are with you today?
Sure. I have Miss Kathy Tucker, science teacher at Fort Myers High School. I have Morgan's mother, Sarah Barkhurst. I also have Grace's parents that are here. And then with me also Jeannie LaFountain, who's my director in intervention programs, and Soretta Ralph, who's executive director for student support and academic enrichment.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
We look forward to this year's event. Board members?
I think that
We'll
there's a
write down the
lesson
line.
in this for all staff who presents to the board. If you bring students in, you're going to win our hearts because these kids are outstanding. So thank you for your work.
My pleasure.
It's what it's all about.
And I'm on the actual Edison Festival Light board, and we work it, and it's an awesome event. We love it. Always excited about it, and I highly recommend anyone to go and attend it. You can just be observer and watch these kids in action. It's amazing. And as a grown up in Lee County, I've gone to the science fairs. Now, I'm not the science, you don't want me to do any of that. But I did attend them and did it when I had to do it, but it's fun to watch, so.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes, and I just want to add a little extra thanks for the fairs, yes, but also for the other opportunities that you provide for students with your hard work along with your committee, the summer camps and the scholarships and all of those wonderful events that take place at the Edison home, and we really appreciate all of that. Yeah. Thank you. I know how hard you work.
Ms. Morgan?
I second Ms. Patrica's comment. It was great to have students here, and one of the things we ask ourselves, are we getting student input when we're making decisions? So it's great to hear from you kids, and I feel very encouraged. My question is, how do we provide recognition for these kids who are performing in areas other than sports? I think, and I should ask the kids, do you get into it because teachers motivate you? Do you get into it because you have friends who have done it? How aware are you of other scientists in your schools?
Grace?
Grace always has something to say, so we can have her to start.
I think
Anybody else want to respond?
As her teacher, I offered extra credit. Did not need the extra credit, but to encourage students that may not be doing their best in a science class because science isn't dance and it isn't orchestra, and they don't have a very good platform to perform on and to get recognized. So that is helpful in that it's not a grade that they have to get. It's something that they can do, that they're passionate about. Last year I had a girl who was interested in the extra credit. She loved to bake. She used herbs to see if they would keep the bread fresher. And she enjoyed it immensely. She had as much fun as I did doing the experiment.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I'll just add, and you heard it in the earlier presentation from Dr. Butts about changing the culture. I grew up playing athletics, but also being a nerd. I love STEM, loved science and math. And if you're an undefeated football team and you pass on the playoffs because you felt you had a good year, is that acceptable in today's society? So at times we sign up for these academic competitions but then don't follow through. Yes. Is that acceptable? And then the other thing I'll mention that we're trying to change the culture, we have digital badges. So basically when a school signs up for one of these 3 fairs and then a school sends students to those fairs, we create a digital badge which is nothing more than a JPEG or a PNG file, and we put it up on social media, and we encourage schools to post that digital badge on their website. Oh, nice. Promoting that they participated in our fairs. Many of you might be familiar with the Capital One Cup that's given to the college athletic program. Well, we initiated an Edison Cup last year, and that's awarded to the best elementary school and the best secondary school that not only highlights their STEM participation, but also their STEM success at those fairs. So we're trying to breed a culture of competitiveness, but also to give the proper accolades to those schools, to those students, and to those accomplishments.
Well done.
Important. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Well, we'll look forward to being out there with you.
That's right.
Mark your calendars. January 20th will be Regional Science and Inventors Fair. And May 12th, 2018, will be our Elementary Science Expo at our new home, Suncoast Credit Union Arena.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And now we are on to our Head Start program, quality improvement within Head Start and Early Start with Mrs. Maggie Stevens and Director Mrs. Jeannie LaFountain.
Good afternoon, board members, Dr. Adkins, Mr. Martin. I'm bringing forward to you today the Quality Improvement Plan, and previous to this time I have given many board members briefings on it earlier. And this resulted from an incident at one of our schools, and the Office of Early Head Start requested a plan, and so it gave us an opportunity to look at all of our processes and procedures, to look at our training and to make sure that we didn't have any gaps or holes in our processes. So we have revised some of them, and we have also focused a lot of our training with our professional development with our teaching staff and support staff. So we saw this as an opportunity to be part of our continuous improvement. And then the Office of Head Start has requested that both the board and the Policy Council members are, which is our Head Start equivalent of SAC, are briefed on this topic. That's my short delivery.
Board members?
Have any questions?
I think we've had do we have all of this in our backup material?
Yes.
Ms. Morgan?
Yeah, first of all, I know you run a fantastic program, and it's a model program for the U.S. One incident is really unfortunate. You've done a great job doing your follow-up. Have you heard back from them?
Yes, we heard back from them last week. They're requesting a telephone meeting that includes a lot of backup documentation. Again, mostly the same documentation, but also a member from the board, a member from our policy council, some teaching staff, kind of a cross-section of our program to go through all of this again. So I've sent that information on through Ms. LaFountain to get up to you, and so they've suggested a couple of dates. It's probably an hour telephone conference, and then that should be it.
My other comment is, I got a chance to read last night before it was taken down, that lengthy executive summary and community assessment, the final assessment.
Would you like to know?
Did any of you read that?
That will.
Is there anybody, Dr. Atkins, is there anybody in Lee County who has written a document like that that describes the demographics and the challenges for this community? I've not seen anything like that.
Not that I am aware of.
Right. It's
no.
The community and needs assessment is a Head Start requirement. Right. Now we write a complete one every 5 years, but in Florida we change so quickly. If you waited 5 years, it would be a whole different place. So we write a pretty lengthy every year. You will see that again as part in January as part of our eligibility, because we are charged with identifying the most at-risk children in our community. So it has to be based on, we have to have some kind of facts and documentation as to why we choose the children we choose for our program. So that's what that's based on.
Keep going.
So my question is, can we make that available to the people who need it and have probably never done it, like some of the county people, like
Yes.
the news press? I mean, I just think, have any of you read anything like that?
No.
Do you feel is of value to other areas in the community who are working with kids and families?
Definitely provide insight, yes.
Yeah, well, that's my observation. I was very impressed by that. So
I'll provide it to Dr. Atkins, and he can do with it as he wishes.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Preschool is where it starts, and preschool makes all the difference in terms of the success as students move forward. And thank you for what you do today and what you've done for years and years, and it gets better all the time.
Thank you.
Thank you to both of you.
And now, Dr. Desmours, Dr. Creel, and Mr. Greg Blurton. And we welcome Dr. Creel.
And also, as we are transitioning, just a couple things. First of all, thank you for the comments regarding their program. It is absolutely outstanding, and they are looking for ways to continue to expand what they're doing in that arena. But they truly do a great job every single day. And then before she leaves, I want to recognize Kathy Tucker, who was presenting, sitting beside Lee Hughes. But Kathy and I used to teach together, 7th grade, out at Gulf Middle School. She's a wonderful teacher, and so she's a true asset to Fort Myers High School and this district.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we know who to go to for any scoop?
You can get all the dirty laundry on me by going to Kathy Tucker.
There you go. Optimum school size. I'm eager to hear what you have to say.
Well, then, good afternoon, Dr. Atkins and members of the board. We are here to present some preliminary data about optimum school size, things that we need to look for, items that we have researched, and then what we still have left to go. I believe the conversation started at this board table with the board asking, based on the plan that we have right now with the 7 schools in 5 years, are we sure that we want to build the schools the same way that we have them now? That is our 1,000 at elementary, 1,200 at middle, and approximately 2,000 at high school. That is the way it is configured in the plan, capital plan right now as we have it. But based on that question, we went back to do some research, and we're sharing that preliminary research with you, and then, like I said, talking about how much we have to go. So first, we thought it important that we knew from a baseline level where we stood now, and then how that compares to everyone else across the state. So the first several pages that you have within the backup just shows all of that data for when the DOE had it readily available, which was for school year 2015-2016, where school sizes were across the state in each of the different counties. As you can see at the elementary level, most of the elementaries across the state, and there's 1,253 of them out of the 1,967 elementaries, were between 500 and 1,000 students. And with our elementary schools as we stand now, according to this information, most of our schools are also within that range. And so you will find the same within our middles and high schools as you look at each of the different sets of data. Our average size in our county is the same as what the average is across the state. So we're lined up. But then what we wanted to do also, and in this data beginning on page 9 of the data, we also have what are the 10 largest schools at each level across the state, because what will happen if we believe that we need to go larger than what we currently have now. So you'll see at the elementary level, the largest elementary school is at a little over 1,900 students, if you can imagine, which I'm not so sure that I can. At the middle school level, a little over 2,200 students, and at the high school level, tipping the scales at 4,600 students, right? And so that's just some information about across the state, what are the 10 largest high schools in that 10 largest schools at each level across the state for that given year. So we went to do a little research then with some of those counties that had the largest schools in across the state, and we contacted Orange County and Miami-Dade County because the Orange and Dade appeared several times in all of the largest school categories. For Orange County, they gave us a draft of a memo that they took to their board some time ago. You'll see that the date of the memo is in 2004, and they proposed at that time what they thought the optimum school size for them should be based on various factors. Financial factor, of course, being one of them, but most importantly, what they felt were other things, operational needs, academic data as well. And their optimal school size for elementary was 830 students, plus or minus 25%, so you see the range there. 1,200 students for middle school, plus or minus 25%, there's the range. And at high school, almost a little under 2,800 students, and there's the range. So when you look at the ranges of each of the schools for Orange County, their optimal size is not much different than where we are operating now with our current school sizes. High school is a little bit larger, of course, than our current high schools, but if you go within the lower range, then we're right there. That was Orange County. Then for Miami-Dade, the feedback that and let me back up and say that Orange County as well said, yes, we do have larger schools, but the schools that we have built most recently have not been of that size. Those were schools that they had built some time ago. In Miami-Dade, the answer was very much the same. Yes, they do have larger schools, but the schools that they were building now were smaller, based primarily on what they felt was their customer demand. which was basically their parents. Their charter school populations are a little bit larger there and growing. Charter school is their competition there, and so they felt that they were having to build schools to what their customer base, what their parents were demanding, and their parents were demanding something that they felt were smaller settings. So anything that they're building now is smaller, and in addition to that, he also commented, the CFO in Miami-Dade, that they no longer build traditional middle schools. They're all K-8 when they build, because they felt that their parents are demanding that stability, less transition, and felt that it worked better for their students. So based on parent demand, that's kind of where they were going. So in this data also, on pages 16 and 17, we included some demographic and some academic data on each of those schools that are listed in the packet as the 10 largest in each of the schools. So you'll see there really is some pretty good academic data there if you're just looking in terms of the grade itself. And then you'll see the demographics, which is a little mixed across the board. So we felt that it was important to get some data, some baseline information as to what's out there right now. The schools that have been in both places have very large schools and very small schools. What's their thought about that? What led them to their decisions, and how are they kind of working those decisions as they make them? In the kind of academic research out there, we did not find anything definitive that said, yes, this is the perfect school size. So as far as we could find, there was really nothing out there that really said that. So it really is about the factors that as a district we feel are important to consider and the priorities we want to consider. Of course, financial and operational things will be factors, but what we feel is best academically for the school, we believe should be the driver, and Dr. Creel will speak to that in just a little bit. And so the next steps that we have, so this was the background data. We have a committee put together that is made up of several principals, and those principals have been at schools of various levels, at schools of various sizes. They've been at K-8s, and they've been at traditional elementaries, middles, and high schools. They've opened new schools, and like I said, they've worked with various size schools. And so they are very helpful in providing some data and some input. And the next step that the committee wanted to take after kind of looking at all of this information is to say, okay, well, we've done some research. We know that Miami-Dade has some smaller schools and some larger schools, and academically their data is pretty good. We want to go visit those schools with a plethora of questions around operations, around financial, and around academic data, and we want to go ask some questions and then maybe come back with a little bit more information to share with the superintendent, at which point he might be ready to make a recommendation to the board or to ask more questions and send us to do some more research before we formulate that recommendation. So that's kind of the background of what we've done so far. I want to turn it over to Mr. Blurton so he can speak a little bit to operational and planning considerations based on everything that we've talked about, and then to Dr. Creel to talk about some academic information.
Good afternoon. Yes, it's field trip time. So part of that then,
Everybody has their permission slip signed.
correct.
It's not Wednesday, though.
Thought we were going on a Friday. No, it is not Wednesday. That is not hump day. It's Tuesday. It's a regular Tuesday. Yes. So part of the operational and the planning perspective is we've briefed you on the number of schools that we need, the population growth, and how accurate we are in forecasting that growth for next year and the number of years out. But what does that mean? If we build a 4,000 seat high school, if we go to our next middle schools and elementary schools, we need 2 elementary schools and 2 middle schools in our east and south zones in the next 5 years. So if the discussion is K through 8, from an operational standpoint, what does that mean from transportation, for bus scheduling, for bell times, where those will go? What does that do if we do a K through 8, because the student population is different in a combined school versus a standalone elementary and a standalone middle school? So those are the things in consideration, because ultimately it is the academic side that is going to be a key driver. And what do our schools look look like? What are the resources going to be? What is the programming going to be? And then operations can give its input on what does that mean in actually building the school. Do we have property to do this? We do. I mean, if you want to build a 4,000 seat school, and when we mentioned that to some of the principals, it was interesting. It's, some are like, wow, I think I could do that. And others like, 4,000. How does everybody feel about a 4,000 seat high school? Crickets. No, it's something to think about. As far from a property standpoint, for new schools, we can build vertically. But I think one of the key things from a planning perspective is, and we're finalizing our analysis of our existing schools, and which schools can we expand upon. We have a decent amount of our schools that have land that we can build additions to, but when you start building additions, then you're starting to look at these numbers. We have a 1,200 seat elementary school. Do we want to add another 10 plus classrooms to that and get that number creeping upwards of 1,500 or more? So all of those are factors, and when we do these field trips, those are the discussions from operations to operations. What does it mean for transportation, for planning, for maintenance on these types of schools? And so it is definitely a team effort in getting all of this data and coming to the superintendent with recommendations on where do we want to be in the next 5+ years as far as what do our schools look like.
And welcome, Dr. Creel. We're so glad that you are on board.
Thank you, and please allow me to express my appreciation and let you know what an honor it is to be a part of the District of Lee County. On day 7, I want to tell you that I have had a tremendous opportunity to work with some incredible individuals already, and they are helping me learn fast and furiously. I appreciate both Amy and Greg that have met with me over the past few days to kind of just brief me on where this committee was originally. And so I'm coming in a little blind here, but we thought that sharing some information regarding the academic standpoint would be important as we really keep academics at the focus here. So just to remind you, Lee spoke about the Every Student Succeeds Act. Very much a part of the ESSA is the social and emotional part of a child beyond the academic portion of meeting the needs of students, which is why current research tells us that creating schools that are smaller learning communities are usually better environments. However, I do believe that it is prudent for us to find that, and this may just be a Georgia term, so bear with me for a moment, that sweet spot about what is really academically sound as well as what is fiscally prudent. As we talk about some of the elements, and Amy mentioned about investigating a K-8 school, we know that vertical articulation, it allows teachers to work together, particularly from elementary to middle school. It also lessens the transition for children. It does provide that stable environment. And another piece that I kind of have been introduced to is that so many parents oftentimes feel like that they are not able to participate in middle schools as a parent involvement aspect. But if they get started in a K-8 environment, then maybe they won't feel that distance of parental involvement. We also will investigate what the school size has on student learning. I look forward to speaking with Miami-Dade and what they found that to be. And then the only thing that I also encourage us to consider is ensuring that as we build new buildings that we are thinking about 21st century learners, and that we are truly building buildings that are flexible and that we are able to meet the needs of our children as they move forward.
Exactly right. Thank you. Board members? Ms. Patricia.
As we, as a board, have sort of focused on the importance of getting information and suggestions from committees, our advisory committees. Somebody came up to me last night after EDAC and told me about a high school in Michigan, and it's 3 different high schools on one campus. So it's 4,000 students on one campus, but 3 different high schools. So you don't get lost in the massive number of schools on the campus, but you're able to share resources like stadiums and basketball gymnasiums and other outdoor things. So that would be an efficient way to maintain high academic outcomes. I have the name of the school. I'll email it to you. I don't know if that's like a one-off thing in the state of Michigan or if it's done in other places throughout the country. And it's funny because as you were starting this presentation, I was thinking in my mind, what is the sweet spot in terms of number of students in a school? So I'm from Massachusetts. It's not a Georgia thing.
Okay. I'll tell you that in Georgia, the numbers that were shared here from an elementary and high school perspective and middle school as well, those are the numbers that we're building buildings from. The district that I was most recently in, we had a middle school that was 2,000 students, and we were frantically trying to find a way to reduce the number of students in that, because it just does not allow for children to feel connected with the school community.
I did have an opportunity also to speak to Dr. Gorman about this exact issue. You know, Dr. Gorman was a superintendent for a number of years up in Charlotte-Mecklenburg, and then prior to that at Tustin, California. In Charlotte-Mecklenburg, they took on this very same issue and did significant attempts at research to find the quote sweet spot, and I think that was the term he used as well. So, but where they settled in Charlotte-Mecklenburg ultimately was for a high school was somewhere, the schedule really drove some of those decisions, but somewhere between 1,700 to 2,200, they found to be about the right spot for a high school, and looked like the elementary and the middle schools were really pretty much in alignment with the way we are currently building our buildings, high school as well. So that was encouraging for us to hear. It was also encouraging that, you know, like our staff, I know that they've gone out and really done a significant amount of research, and there's nothing that just pops out and says, here's the magic answer. And that's kind of the journey that they found up there in Charlotte-Mecklenburg. So it was good to have that perspective.
Thank you. Mr. Teuber.
And Dr. Atkins, we fluctuated from our schools across all our high schools from 1,800 up to as much as 2,300. I'd be interested to have the principals that have seen the both, especially in the same structure when we had Mariner or North, when they've expanded so big and so small. It's not linear. I mean, it's really an exponential when you start going from 18 to 19 to 21. Once you get beyond 21, I mean, it really goes up it goes crazy. And so I'd like to really get a lot of input from our principals that have been through those times and have them provide you that input.
We can certainly do that. I think you've already, you pretty much hit the nail on the head, however, because, what we've heard is that, that 1,800, 1,900, that's manageable. When you start getting up there into, 2,200 kids, it starts to really strain your infrastructure. You got to worry about hall changes and so forth. And when you look at size, I was out at Bonita Springs High School just last week with Mark and just going through that building. One of the things that Mr. Estes was showing me is one of the hallways, and that's a 1,700 student station facility. If you get to expanding that, we would have a concern about just getting numbers of kids through some of these particular hallways that was up on the second floor is what I was talking about. So that's certainly that's another consideration is traffic flow as you get larger through a large building.
And we see that with Ida Baker and Island Coast now.
Yeah. Interesting. Anybody else?
No, just to address that with the principal input, one thing we do plan on doing is once getting a lot of principal input on the questions that we're taking down with us to Miami-Dade to make sure that we're covering the gamut that we should be covering based on their input. And then, we may take some others with us besides the ones that are on the committee as well if they choose to do so. But if not, we'll definitely have the questions that they want to have answered.
Okay. Thank you.
Justice Fisher?
And then what about involving community members, parents, business community? Would that be something that
Yes, I think we'll be kind of trying to gather together this. We find this to be background information and background research, doing the legwork here, and then once we get that information together, really coming back to the superintendent and finding out, okay, what do we believe is the best way to possibly communicate this information or get feedback from different stakeholders, and who really should those groups be. Whether so we're going to work on that aspect as well as soon as we complete kind of gathering that background information.
Okay, and so then would that be something that you would provide us with some talking points, perhaps for our advisory boards?
Oh, yes, I believe we certainly can do that. If that's
Ms. LaRiviere?
And Dr. Creel, I'm glad that you mentioned flexible space, not the way it is with the same old, same old. I was at a meeting about a month ago, and I plan on going to Sarasota because they've redone their middle schools to make them more flexible. And talking with one of the board members on the academic side, she said we could make the space more flexible, but we had to make sure the teachers were going to be flexible about how they used it. And that's the key. That's a whole piece. So in the process, as we are looking at building for 21st century, we need to make sure we're helping our teachers develop that capacity to think outside of the box on how they can teach.
So if I may make a connection back to our first presentation about continuous improvement and the NEA, I applaud the district for having schools participate in that. Every one of those factors that are listed from that grant and the Baldridge, and I've had the opportunity to be a part of Baldridge as well as other continuous improvement processes. And the outline of what is a part of that is really best practices that should be a part of every one of our schools and our teachers' planning and their work together. And so I appreciate the fact that you're supportive of that, and I hope that moving forward that we can make that be a part of work with our principals and work with our teachers, and have them recognize that as we continue to move forward in meeting the needs not only in buildings, but it's that continuous improvement process that's going to help us meet the individual needs of each of our children.
Thank you. Anything else? Well, we'll look forward to the next presentation.
Thank you.
And now we move to employee benefit plans for 2018 and 19. Dr. Pruitt and Ms. Bonnie McFarland. Welcome.
Good afternoon, board members, superintendent. I went out into the hallway and tried to find some students up here with me, but I was not successful. So we're just, Bonnie and I are going to just have to try this for ourselves, but noted for future presentations. So this afternoon, we're going to talk with you about our employee benefits and some items that are coming forward, as well as just sort of an overall review for you. We have various things that are available to the employees, but specifically what we're going to talk to you about today is the changes to the medical insurance, and then the dental insurance, a little change there. Just to note also is in terms of our life insurance coverage, that contract renewal is pending with no changes, and then our employee assistance program is underway for the process of reviewing that. So that's just kind of an overview of where we are right now relative to employee benefits. And just want to review with you the process and how we arrive at these recommendations that we bring forward to you. And we have an insurance task force which is part of the talc and spout contracts, that Mark and Kerr are part of that process. The voting members of the committee, there are 8 superintendent representatives, and then there's 8 union representatives, 4 Talc and 4 Spout. We also have, as many of you know, because you either currently serve or have previously served on this task force, and then we have various other members, retired folks and so forth, that come and are part of the meetings but are not voting members but are certainly there for the conversation, as well as representatives from our carriers and consultants that advise us through this process. I just remind you of that simply because there is so much conversation and discussion and information that is brought forward. I just kind of wanted to emphasize the point of the time that is taken to bring these recommendations forward to you. Also noted is the times that we have reviewed these recommendations, you know, with the insurance task force prior to bringing them forward to you. I want to take this opportunity to just share with you and compliment Bonnie McFarland. You know, since taking on this role several years ago, I was very fortunate because the area that I had the least amount of knowledge was this area. It had to do with insurance and benefits, and if it wasn't for the fact that Bonnie's such a good teacher, and probably ever if she wants to retire, I may convince her to go into the classroom because she does such a great job at that. But just want to acknowledge her hard work and everything that she's done in the time that I have been in this role, because it's really been outstanding. She's going to start with reviewing with you. While the dental insurance isn't coming to you because we're already under contract, there are some information that we want to share with you that's changing. So I'm going to turn it over to Bonnie to talk specifics.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Pruitt. I've said in the past that I love this, so I'm grateful that I get to work in insurance, and I do kind of laugh because most people I say that to, they roll their eyes. They're like, oh, thank God I don't have to do that. So yeah. I enjoy it, so I guess that makes me a little odd, but I'm grateful to be here. Our dental insurance, as Dr. Pruitt mentioned, is currently under contract. The contract did guarantee 2 years of rate guarantees, and those expire on April 1 of 18. Our plans are running very hot, meaning that we're at almost 100% loss ratio on all 3 of our plans, which is not a really good place to be in on a fully insured product. So the ITF did review the option of taking a rate increase to that plan to keep all the plans as they were, and then we did review options of making plan design changes in order to keep the rates the same. As many of you know, has been a lot of activity around dental insurance, most of which was centered around the benefits that were offered to our employees. And so the end result of the decision, the ITF voted to maintain the existing plans with a slight rate increase to those rates. And the next slide outlines the expiring rates are in the gray, and the new proposed rates are in the red. And as you can see on the employee-only plans, in most cases it's several dollars on a monthly basis for those additional for that rate increase.
One of the other things, just as a reminder, we've talked about this in many times over the last several years, but Bonnie has also spearheaded an incredible wellness plan initiative in our district, which has resulted in some substantial savings relative to our health plan. And we've been talking about how the healthcare trend over the last 5 years has continued to increase. Costs have gone up. That's been, across the nation, but what you may or may not remember is that we have not changed or touched rates in 5 years. So, and that's pretty substantial when you look at other employers and look at situations around the nation. It really has been incredible that we've been able to do that. All along the way, though, Bonnie has been very careful to say, at some point, that's going to, there's going to be a point when that's going to come together, and we're not going to be able to, hold everything steady like we've been able to do for the past 5 years. So as we talk about, and this is what's going to be coming to you, as we talk about this, I just want to keep that in the forefront of your mind relative to how well we have done over the past 5 years and how it's put us into this position. I also wanted to review with you the history of the health fund reserve, and as you can look back at the history of that, we had a steady increase relative to those amounts, and we heard, I know from the board over the last several years about let's put that money back to the employees, and so we have done that and put that towards wellness, and everything has gone directly back to the employees relative, whether directly or indirectly relative to these funds. And then we've also used that money to help us to keep those rates steady as well, which has been part of our strategy. And so what you'll notice is while we got up to about $50 million, as we look at today, so to speak, we're down to $34 million, and then Bonnie's going to talk a little bit about how that projection moves forward relative to the recommendations we're going to make to the health fund. I also want to remind that one of the things that you all did as a board was increase the board contribution relative to the health care. If you'll recall, you did that and was very well received, by staff, because it really, again, helped for that bigger picture of not having to increase our rates, going forward. So at this time, Bonnie's going to review the details of this with you, and then we'll answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, so we are self-insured on our medical plan, and so in a self-insured product, a little bit different than a fully insured product, the projection that you're trying to hit is to get your revenue, or the premiums that you pay into the plan, to meet your expected expenses. And so in a self-insured plan, our target is always zero, that those two things would equal and we wouldn't have any overages. That's in a perfect world. So as we have looked at projecting forward for the 18-19 plan year, which starts on April the 1st, our projected revenues is about $85 million. Our projected expenses are about $95 million. So we're about 13.65 million apart from our projected revenues and our projected expenses, with our projected expenses being higher. So there's basically two ways to balance that equation. You either have to increase the money coming into the plan, or you have to decrease the claims being paid out on the plan. Or really the third option, which is to do both. And so what we spent a great deal of time with our actuary and with our insurance task force. We had two separate meetings on this. The first meeting, we presented a series of options that myself and the actuary and that team had developed, and then we took it to the insurance task force and we said, here are the options that we've come up with. What additional options would you like to see? The actuary then took those recommendations back from the committee and brought back even additional expanded options on what we had originally presented. So we did review a lot of options prior to coming to the recommendation that we're bringing forward to you. And so as I said before, you can do one or the other or both. And so the end result that the insurance task force is recommending to the board is that we do both. So the slide that you see before you is a slight modification to the plan design. And for ease, the red items are the changes. So when you look on the right side, the items in red are changed. And those items were picked for a very important reason. The deductibles and the out-of-pocket maxes are utilized primarily for more major services. So those are the more expensive services, and so those have increased slightly under this proposal. And on the other major change is to the emergency room visit. The reality that we've had in Southwest Florida is that we have a much more expanded option for urgent care type options within our area than we had 5 years ago when we put these plans in place. We also looked at our emergency room data, and approximately 40% of our emergency room visits were for non-emergency items. So those aren't people who thought they had an emergency only to find out maybe it wasn't as severe as they thought, but people who presented at the ER with non-emergency symptoms. And so given the expanded options for other options like urgent care, and we have like minute clinics and things like that in our area that didn't exist 5 years ago, and the high number of non-emergency visits that were going to the ER, we felt like that was a place to increase the plan to try to drive that traffic where it really should be. Somebody with a cold probably shouldn't be in the ER unless they have a lot of other extenuating circumstances. One other thing to note on that slide, on the far right-hand side at the very top, you will see a change under the high deductible health plan. That's actually a benefit to the employee because that change allows us to do what's called an embedded deductible. So if you have the family plan on that program, You don't have to meet the full family deductible in order for the plan to start paying. You only have to meet the individual deductible. So while that does go up a little bit, that is the minimum allowed by federal law to allow us to do that embedded deductible, which we felt was a benefit for employees on that plan. The next slide that you see are the premium increases. The kind of top half of that slide are the monthly rates. Those are the full premium rates. As you know, there's a board contribution that offsets those rates, so the bottom half of that slide are the employee rates. The rates listed here are monthly. Most of our employees are paid on a 24 pay period basis, so the pay period rate would be half of that.
Just real quick, a couple just points I want to make. One, she mentioned the increase in the amount of urgent care, minute clinics, and things like that. One of the reasons that's important to this conversation a little bit is that that has significant impact on the decision whether or not we wanted to go into the clinic discussion. Back when we started the clinic discussion, there wasn't that availability of these types of clinics in Lee County. Now we've had a tremendous upsurge in the availability of these, and so that, of course, has impacted our decision about moving forward in that area. The second thing that's important is the reason I really wanted this to be briefed, and I do sincerely appreciate the attention, is because when you have changes in premium, this is going to bring questions they're going to come your direction. So in anticipation that you're going to get questions, because it's going to impact somebody's bottom line in terms of their paycheck. And we've been able to, because of the board's contribution, you've been able to avail yourself a lot of voluntary benefits that you might not necessarily have been able to in years past. Some of that's going to change as a result of these changes, so those questions are going to come your way. This will allow you to be equipped to answer those questions, or at least defer them to Bonnie's wonderful staff, who can also handle them as well.
Yes, and we're happy to work with any employees who do have questions about their plan options. One item I just wanted to note before we left this slide, is that while we do show a rate increase on all three plans, there are still 2 of the 3 plans that are covered by the board contribution, sometimes called by our employees free. And I always put my air quotes around that because there's not much free about healthcare. So there are 2 plans that are still paid for by board contribution under this new contribution structure. So I thought that was important for you to know as a board. Okay, the last item that we spoke with the Insurance Task Force about, the Insurance Task Force is a subcommittee of our bargaining units. So part of the discussion with the Insurance Task Force was to make a recommendation to our bargaining committees to consider an increase to the board contribution. That particular piece would be something done through the bargaining committee because the Insurance Task Force simply takes what's been bargained and then purchases and makes recommendations to the board for the insurances that are available. So that is a recommendation that we are making to those bargaining committees, and the proposed increase is $10 per employee per month, which would increase the annual contribution by $120 per person.
And just a reminder, and Bonnie and Dr. Pruitt, I'm sure, have more up-to-date information, but the last time we looked at that comparable data, we're still below the average in terms of the employer-provided benefit to the employee. So back at the time we looked at it for a government municipality, it was like $7,500, and I think for private sector it was $7,600. Don't know what it is now, probably up a little bit from there. So the 68 is still a little bit less than what the median would be.
Okay, so in summary, we had approximately a $13.65 million deficit. After making changes to the rates, that deficit was cut to a $6.35 million deficit. After adding the plan design changes that we reviewed, that deficit was cut to a $3.29 million deficit. And with making the formulary change, which is part of the plan design changes, that deficit is under $2 million. In the event that the bargaining committees do take a recommendation similar to what we've made, that would put our deficit under $1 million on a $95 million plan. So from a percentage basis, that's a tolerable amount for the size plan that we have and for the reserve that we have. So are there any questions that we can answer for you? We will be bringing this to the board at the December meeting for vote.
Just one thing that you may want to do for them is
Yes.
if I'm a, let's say I'm an employee-only person, you know, what might be an anticipated impact that I might see moving forward, and then maybe project that out to somebody where you might have even more of a significant impact. So in other words, what I'm trying to do is anticipate questions they might receive when these plan changes go into effect.
It's there.
Yeah, that's right.
It's on the slide.
Recommended premium changes.
So I'm not going to attempt to do math on the fly.
You have it.
But it is on the slide that for the recommended premium changes, you can see the difference noted there. With the current structure, both the 3769 and the 5773 plans, those are our two traditional PPO plans. Those plans did have an excess amount of board contribution. So if I was in the employee-only scenario that Dr. Adkins just referenced, I would have enough board contribution to pay all of my medical premium, but then I would have money left over that would go to pay other pre-tax benefits such as dental, vision, or our cancer insurance. So with the new strategy for the premiums, if I'm on the 5773 plan, I still have enough board contribution to cover my medical. What I won't have going forward is that excess money to cover dental, vision, or cancer insurance, which are the other pre-tax options. Under the new premium structure, the 3769 becomes what we call a buy-up plan, which means that the employee would then have to pay some premium towards that, which would be $37.40 a month under the new program. Under the old program, they would have also had some monies that would have paid for those other benefits. So we do anticipate some folks maybe shifting or saying, you know, maybe I'll drop from the 3769, which is the richer of the two plans, to the 5773 plan to address the changes in finance. And then the high deductible health plan is a great option for employees because there is actually money left over from the board contribution that goes into an HSA, which is like it's a savings account for your health insurance, essentially, is what it's a health savings account, which is what an HSA stands for. So the HSA plan would be covered by the board contribution. The 5773 plan would be covered by the board contribution. And then the 3769, if employees chose to stay there, would be the buy-up plan. One of the things we do know from our data when we've looked at this is that most of our employees are in a plan that's richer than their needs. So when we looked at the amount of insurance or the amount of health care people consumed, most of our employees are consuming less than $3,000 a year of health care, but they're in the richest plan. So there are some people who consume a lot of health care for whom the richest plan would be the better option. They're better off paying the $37.40 in premium a month because they're consuming a greater amount of health care than that. But we know we have about 40 to 60% of our employees who are in that 3769 plan who are in a plan too rich for the amount of health care that they're consuming on an annual basis. So for most people, that 3769 plan is going to meet their needs and may end up being a less expensive option when they add their premium plus their medical spend together.
I would like Bonnie, because I think you might get some questions about the medication formulary and the changes. Somebody saying, why, you know, am I having to change medicine or what have you? So I do want you to just review that a little bit because I do anticipate you might get some questions about that.
So the proposed formulary change, the name of the plan we're currently on is Premier Plus, and we're moving to a Value Plus formulary. And the ITF spent a great deal of time reviewing not the names of the individual members, but by number, how many people were going to be impacted by this change, and then what medications would be impacted by the change. It was a relatively small number, considering that we have over 10,000 employees and over 11,500 members on our plan. It was less than 1,000 members that were going to be impacted by the change. In addition, we worked with Aetna, who is our it's called an ASO, Administrative Services. They're the people who administer our plan on our behalf. And the commitment that we have from them is that for everyone who is impacted by this change, they will receive an individual letter that says, you know, dear Bonnie McFarland, this is the current medication that you're on based on the claims that they're providing. Here is the medications that are alternatives to the medication that you're on that would be at the copay you're currently paying. So if you're in a generic medication, there's no copay for the member. If this results in a change where there would be a copay for that member for the medication they're currently on, they'll receive a letter no less than 60 days before the plan starts detailing what options would be available to them. That's going to come from Aetna, who is our administrator. They have all that HIPAA data, and they have the, you know, all the guards in place that are required by HIPAA. We will not get that as a district, but the members will be empowered with information that they can either decide, you know what, I want to stay on the medication I'm on, or let me take this letter to my doctor and talk about what medication alternatives might work for me that would allow me to maintain the copay that I'm currently paying for my medication.
Thank you. Questions?
Mr. Stoiber?
Dr. Atkins, if you could give us, I know we saw at one point the contributions based upon on the private and the public, where we sat and where we ranked. I think for the board going forward to the public, it'd be good to show that where we are comparative to other public entities and private entities, and hopefully provide that to the media as well, so when they report on this, when we vote on it, they see that we're not, you know, that we are being prudent and doing, you know, that on both sides of the coin, we're being as fair as we can to our employees, but still, you know, we still have a long way to go to be competitive.
Absolutely, we'll do that. We'll get you that data.
And I think too, you know, at its most basic level, being self-insured, we have to have money to cover the bills that come in. And I think while that's difficult for a lot of people when they, you know, don't understand that because they're not utilizing the, you know, the plan a lot, it's still being self-insured. We have to make sure we have enough money to pay the bills.
Ms. Lauriviere?
A question, and this has to do with the fact of having to go into our reserves. It is my understanding, based on when I used to attend Insurance Task Force, that businesses under the Affordable Health Care Act, if we provide opportunities for health care benefits that exceeds a certain amount, we have to pay penalty. And those benefits even include health savings accounts, flex benefits, not that we pay for it, just their capability of using those services. So my question is, about how much have we had to pay out in penalties because of that, or have we?
We have not had to pay penalties under the Affordable Care Act. We have had to pay taxes under the Affordable Care Act.
Got you. So I used the wrong word. So what have those taxes wound up being?
I would need to get you an exact figure to speak to that. They've been moving, and there's multiple taxes that have had to be paid. So some of those taxes have expired. We've paid the last tax that we've had to pay on it. The Cadillac tax is what I would think you were referring to in terms of penalty. That has not yet been implemented by the federal government. They keep kind of moving it down the line.
Thank goodness.
And we did do an analysis of our plans to see when we would reach that point. I will tell you that because of the flat nature of our increase the last several years, we would honestly need to redo that. But at the time that we did it several years ago, we were looking at least 2022 before the first plan would trigger that penalty, and 2024 before the second plan. Okay. My guess, based on the flat nature of our increases over the last 5 years, is that that date has moved further down for us. Right. Okay. And then of course we always had the legislative question of when and if that will actually take effect, which is for the federal government to decide. And that's the taxes, we have paid several $1 million of taxes because we have a health plan.
And so therefore it's caused us to dip into reserves.
The other, just a couple things to consider. First of all, we really did need to make some decisions to bring the amount of money in those reserves down. So the Insurance Task Force has done a very good job being a steward of those reserves. So I want to compliment them on that. Secondly, typically any change in the premium structure brings about calls for doing other things over and above. We need to look at our insurance again, combine with other entities to create a larger pool, all these type of things. And I know many of you have had an opportunity to serve on the insurance task force. You know the degree of work that goes into that they shop every possibility. We are self-insured. They have done a tremendous job. This district has done a tremendous job working with our partners to drive down costs of health, but we are so large that we do not realize any benefit by going out and uniting with another group. So we do typically get those questions, so just thought I would pass that on. And if you haven't had a chance to serve on the insurance task force as a board member, it's a really great opportunity in my personal opinion.
Ms. Giovanelli?
And I just want to add, maybe this briefing would be good for, and not this exact briefing, but the Finance Advisory Committee, because this is very helpful for them to see what we're doing. And they want us to give them direction. This would be one that I would recommend because, for me, being, I can't say a new board member, but this is very enlightening. And that is what we need for the community to see, what we're doing and the best practices for us. And so I think this is very valuable, so.
I wanted to follow up on that piece after the question, if I could. You and the Insurance Task Force and Aon have done an amazing job with helping us with finding that fine balance, keeping us in the safeguards and still looking ahead at what may possibly come. And so I just appreciate everyone's hard work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I'd like to add, too, it is significant. You made a very good point. I had a town meeting last night at Fort Myers High School, and that the insurance costs took up a significant amount of time, as will be evidenced with Mr. Castellano. We struggled with that for a while. But anyway, it does come up because it's a big expense for everybody, every employee. And so we do need to be well-versed as we get out in the public. Thank you.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
your time.
Amazing what they do.
We shall now move to public comment. Mr. Martin.
Board policy provides the opportunity at this point in the meeting to address the board concerning any matter on the briefing meeting agenda. The subject of comment is limited to the items on the agenda. The time allowed per speaker is 3 minutes.
Board members or audience, is there anybody that would like to speak at public comment? Mr. Castellano.
Good afternoon, board members, Dr. Adkins, Mr. Martin. Hi, Mary. I'm Mark Castellano, president of the Teachers Association of Lee County. I had to follow that presentation by the Bonnie and Angela. The Insurance Task Force is probably the most, what's the word I want to use? It has been the most educational committee I have sat on, and I think I've sat on a few committees in this district over the years. As Dr. Atkins just said, if you have not had that opportunity, you need to do that. I learned so much. It took me 2 years just to start figuring out the acronyms, and then to really start understanding what's going on has been a tremendous education. As Dr. Kuckel just mentioned last night, we got the question, about insurance is too high, and why don't we join up with the sheriff's department and the stuff that we hear over and over again. And the reality is simple: our insurance has performed phenomenally, although we still get hit constantly with it's too expensive, it's too expensive, it's too expensive. The thing that we have tried to avoid is to stay away from reducing the benefits from the plan so much that the plans are basically useless. Yes, the costs are a little bit more. We know that. But I think our insurance overall has been phenomenal since I have been here, and I do believe that Bonnie and her department are amazing, and we are very appreciative of that. So it is something that you're going to hear about. It is certainly questions that were submitted with Dr. Atkins, to Dr. Atkins for his visit with our TALC representatives tomorrow afternoon. And then if any of you want to drop into that meeting at 5 o'clock, you're welcome to. You have to sit apart, though, from what I understand. So anyway, thank you very much.
Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak? If not, we shall move on to board member comments. I'll start with Ms. Fisher.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me see where I'd like to begin. This past week, we had our first student advisory committee, and we have some returning members and others. We did an orientation to the boardroom. We had our new members and the alternates present. Many parents did stay and enjoyed the meeting with us. So as we move forward, we will have election of officers, and then the students will select areas, topics of concern and issues that they want to learn more about, and we will then be able to work with our staff to get that information to them. And I did want to thank Mrs. Lori Brooks for joining us as a liaison, a staff liaison. She will be an incredible addition to that committee. We also had our first of the year School Health Advisory Committee, and so several things were discussed. The Comprehensive Health Education Program update was presented by some staff members, and the committee felt that there is a need to monitor and survey for implementation and perhaps to visit some of the classes. Some other new business that came up was all regarding safety. Representative from Bike and Pedestrian League came, and they were talking about students riding bikes without helmets, and that there is a law that they should have a helmet, and they were wondering about school resource officers being involved in enforcing that law. They talked about some issues, although they're encouraging bike and walk to school, in many areas, especially in the Cape, I know where I live, it's really difficult for kids to walk because there are no sidewalks. And so that was another thing that's going to move forward. Lee Health is offering a grant. It's my understanding now that we do not have AEDs in our schools, except for a few, and that there is a need to have them for several reasons. We have frequency of incidents where people have need for that, and also we have many of our schools are designated shelters, and so we went through the storm without having that equipment there and available. So that was one thing. So we have also some school safety programs, and Mark Tesoro from the Injury Prevention Coalition had a sports safety program brochure, and he said where safety is a big issue and where there are some injuries and incidents and concussions, and that there's training available for our PE teachers and our coaches, that the schools have not taken advantage of that, and I suppose that's another scheduling and time issue, and that also that there is no more CPR training offered for PE teachers, and they felt that that was something that really needs to be looked at by our school district. So then we have entered into a partnership with the Hanley Center, who has a grant, a recurring grant, and they are offering Parenting Wisely online. They are offering safety and substance abuse prevention programs at one school in each one of our zones to start. Let's see. So, by the way, the AEDs are $1,600 per unit. And it seems to me that we should be very involved with Lee Health as they are providing the opportunity for this grant to have that equipment at each and every one of our schools for the safety of the students and the staff. And then I guess finally, there is, let's see, my notes are a little bit, there is also a bike safety trailer that is owned by the district. It was acquired by a grant, and there are bikes and helmets and coordination available, and that they are encouraging schools to take advantage of that also. So they continue to be very active and looking forward to offering support for not only the health education in the schools, but for safety and other equipment that is needed to support us as we move forward. Continuous systemic improvement will be moving.
Before you move on from that committee, may I ask a question about what you said? Can you repeat what you said about the concussion training for coaches and the AED training
Yes,
for
that
coaches?
it's sports safety training is available through the Injury Prevention Coalition, but the schools have not taken advantage of that. And it is my understanding, according to some of the community members, that we no longer provide CPR training for our PE teachers.
So I thought coaches had to take a video version of that online through the FHSAA. Am I wrong? Not the CPR, the other two. Am I wrong about that, Dr. Atkins?
I don't know. I can check.
Okay. The CPR thing is separate, but the other two, we just talked about this in Gainesville yesterday.
The concussion training?
The concussion training and the AED training.
Okay.
They are required to take it through the FHSAA.
Coaches.
Video.
Coaches only.
Coaches only,
Okay,
yeah.
not PE
Correct.
teachers, okay. And we used to have school safety teams where several members of the staff, including someone in the cafeteria, someone on custodial staff, some teachers, including the PE teachers, and perhaps an administrator, were annually trained and updated in CPR to have that available help immediately, because they say it takes like up to 16 minutes for an ambulance to arrive, and sometimes that could be too late. And so they encourage us to become heart-safe schools.
Thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's quite all right, okay. CSI, I've had the opportunity to serve on that committee for the past 2 years, and I will be moving to DAC, and I believe that Mrs. LaRiviere will be moving to CSI. And some of the issues that they have recommended discussing at the next meeting will be successes or shortcomings on restorative justice practices, participation for low-income and minority students in advanced and accelerated coursework, and teacher retention strategies, whether or not we're using the quality process, which kind of goes right along with the presentation that we had today from Dr. Carlin and Ms. McClung. So then, moving on to that, an announcement from the Drug-Free Coalition that the Cape Coral High School SAD Club has won a 5-star award from the Florida Behavioral Health Network. I attended veteran ceremonies Friday at Cape Elementary and Gulf Middle School, and the students did an outstanding job, and they were heavily attended by our veterans and much appreciated. So thank you to those schools. I'm looking forward to attending Buckingham Thanksgiving Feast and Art Show on Thursday, and I've been informed by Dr. Lohmeyer that I will be with a pre-K group, so wish me luck with that. And, you know, we continue to be grateful for our advisory committees and hope that we will have information for them and tasks for them. They're all asking, you know, what will we be doing? I want to say that there have been several incidents lately that have come to my attention from some of my constituents regarding bus stops and bus safety. And every one of those has been taken care of swiftly and completely. And so I've had callbacks from parents and grandparents saying that the bus is stopping in the right place, the kids are getting home on time, and that they are safe. And they are really grateful for that, and that the bus drivers know their kids better than anybody else, and they are another set of hometown heroes. So I wanted to a shout out for those people. I would like to make note that one of our staff members, Miss Bobby Charlwood, is retiring on November 30th from the school district after over 30 years of service. She has worked in media services, what was then media services, and now currently the communications and production department. I remember her from years ago working behind the scenes, not only recording board meetings, but various district events like Family Engagement Month, Pride and Patriotism, Sound of the Season, and Student Film Festival. She also schedules educational programming for our schools. It has been such a pleasure to work with Bobby. She always said it's about our students first, and her service and dedication to our students and teachers was actually second to none. So we want to thank Bobby Charlwood for her many years of service and wish her a well-deserved happy retirement. And finally, as we approach the Thanksgiving season, we want to count our blessings, be thankful for one another, and to wish our families, students, staff, and our community partners well over the Thanksgiving holiday. Thank you.
Mr. Vanilla?
Okay, well, Mary, I couldn't agree with you more about the sidewalks, because there's talk of that going on in the community, that, you know, we have no sidewalks, you know, Lee County hardly, unless it's in a small, you know, some areas have sidewalks within their community. So I think sidewalks are a much needed thing in Lee County.
They are, and I think we have to continuously poll our city councils and county commissions for that. I remember probably 35 years ago passing around petitions trying to get sidewalks when my kids were in school. So it's still an issue, and I know there are some communities that have managed to pave their walkways and landscape them beautifully. And we do have areas that are wonderful and safe walking for kids and encourage that wellness with complete streets. And I think that, I don't know exactly what we can do, but for the listening audience, you know, contact your community leaders and really opt for that. We don't, you know, we have a low tax rate compared to other areas, a low property tax rate. And so I don't know, but our infrastructure is lacking, and that does impact us as a district, because we have, another discussion was about how many kids are driven to school by car rather than riding the bus. But parents are afraid to let their kids go to the bus stop, not only because it's dark, but because there are swales that have water and snakes in them, and there's traffic zooming by. So it is a huge safety issue, and that's one of the things that, you know, we'll continue to advocate for with our other government leaders.
Well, and then we attended the Tides of Change. You didn't mention that.
Oh, you can talk about that. It was incredible.
It was a beautiful event. Yeah, it was my first one like that, so that was exciting. Lots of people. A spa went for $7,000, so they raised a lot of money. So I was a little surprised how...
A day at the spa.
Yeah, a day at the spa, but it was amazing what they did. So it was actually very exciting. So I would highly recommend anybody that can go next time. It's fun. Went to Franklin Park and met an awesome principal. And I'm not going to say... Dr. Quisenberry, am I saying it right? Okay. She is amazing, and she's doing great things at Franklin Park. And I had met some of her staff, and they have the boys group that we're their boys club, yeah. So gentlemen's club, thank you. And so I promised them that I would actually in the spring, or when they came to an event, and they had all these large ties on that there was like their adult ties, and I'm like, those little boys need ties that fit them. So I volunteered to do that. I had no idea ties cost $22 for children's ties. So, and they need 25 or 30. So it's a work in progress for me to do that. I can't wait to shop on Black Friday because I think that's when I'm going to buy them. But no, I did that. And I've gone to tuxedo places, rentals, and it's quite a task. I spoke too soon, but I have a tendency to do that. So, but I will have those ties very soon. So but I enjoyed Franklin Park. She's doing great things out there. They didn't have that much Irma. They lost trees, but they didn't have any damage, which is a really amazing because some of our schools did, but they were lucky. So it all depends where that eye comes in at is where the damage is really done. But I went to the Avid Showcase out at Lehigh Senior High. Okay, now I'm going to say this. I love Lehigh. I mean, if anybody doesn't want to go to Lehigh, I don't know why they wouldn't. I'm telling you, that was amazing. She's doing amazing things, and she is all over restorative justice, and she is rocking it. And it's apparent that the students respect her, and she gives that right back. And I think that is key to an awesome high school. So I would highly recommend anybody, and I'm sure y'all have all been, but I was with Kathleen on that, and that was just the whole Avid experience was very enlightening for me. So I enjoyed that immensely. I went into Manatee Elementary and Oak Hammock. Okay, those two principals are doing great things too. I loved how Mr. Lamar, like, he knew every kid's name. They all high-fived him. So he was speaking to me, but having to high-five and they were giving hugs. And, I mean, so it was, he's busy. He's a busy guy.
He's a very busy guy.
And so is, she's changing her name, so I'm going to go with Miss McMillan because that's what she wants to be called now instead of, it's Needin or, Snedden, thank you. She wants to get rid of that name. She's going back to her maiden name, so Mrs. McMillan it is. So, and she was great. I loved seeing that she's trying to they're bringing back magnet and arts there and stronger, and we need that. Arts cannot go away. It's very important in our schools, and I've always loved art and music and everything. So, African Network Gala. Okay, that was a packed house. And amazing. If anybody has ever seen the mayor dance, he did it that night. And Dr. Atkins got an award. I don't know if did you bring it? Oh, good. Then he'll have that for we got an award for the school district, so it was awesome. Did we mention the Blue Chip Luncheon last time, or was that happened since then? We did that too, and Travis Roy was amazing, inspirational. And yeah, and a little choked up myself. So when you see what one goes through and what they endure and the outcome, and they learn from it, and that's the best thing is when you learn from an experience and take it and make the best of it. That was what he totally did. Student advisory, I was going to mention that, but Mary did, and that was fun. Pam didn't do so well, and I'm glad to see you're back and feeling better, I hope. So we missed you after that event. So, and I went to, Lee County Tourist Development Council. Okay, that was a very long, engaging community. And I was excited to listen to everything they had to say, especially about Hurricane Irma and how it affected us. And Lee County is huge tourist. So it drives our economy and everything as well as our education does. But it's really important. So I hope to go back to more of those and see how that develops. And that's it for me.
Good. Thank you.
That was really awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It was really awesome. I really do just have a few things. I went to Equity and Diversity Advisory Committee last night, and highest attendance that I've seen since I've been on that committee. It was fantastic to see so many people there, and we heard about our legislative priorities. Rob did a great presentation there, and we also heard about dual language program out at Tice, and they showed some really good numbers in terms of increasing educational outcomes for students through that program, and they are voted to make a recommendation to the board that we consider creating one of those programs in each of our zones, and or creating that program at each level of schooling in one zone. Because right now it's K through 5, and there's no middle school, high school opportunity for that. So that's the recommendation that they're making to us, and I'm sure that we'll follow the correct process for that recommendation, bring it to the board, and go from there. Great group, really great group. Really, you're going to get a lot done with that group this year, I think. Trey Davis, if he's still here, he did the speech for the veterans ceremony here at the district on Friday. And Trey, I mean, I've always known you were an awesome computer guy. I don't understand much of what you do, but you presented a view of our veterans in our country on Friday that was really, really moving for me. And I didn't entirely expect that from you. And when it came from you, I think it was even more meaningful, and it really set the tone to celebrate our veterans this weekend, and I'm immensely grateful to you for setting that tone for the entire district on Friday, so thank you for that. I was going to pull an item from the consent agenda tonight, but I'm not. I'm just going to talk about it here. Scott Rickenbacker, as you know from the backup materials for tonight's meeting, has a new position, and it's part of a larger move we've seen here at the district to address our construction department and our processes and the people who are working in construction, and I believe we're putting Scott in exactly the right place. I trust Scott, which is really important as we unfold and do more construction projects at the district. I think he's got a very high degree of knowledge, and I'm just really happy that he's there. So thank you for that. And finally, FHSAA, I've been to 2 of their events, including and a board meeting since we last met. One of them was state golf championships at Howey in the Hills. I was standing on that course watching kids play golf, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is where I live. Like, it is the most beautiful place I've ever seen in my whole entire life, and I got to be there. So thank you for that. Also, I went to the state swimming championships this past weekend in Stewart, and Fort Myers High School freshmen, I will repeat, a freshman won 2 state championship medals, one in the 200 IM, one in the 500 free. And I'm sorry?
Maddie?
No, Olivia McMurray. And she was so humble when she accepted those awards. I know her from swimming, from the swimming community anyways, and there wasn't a person who knows swimming who didn't know she was going to win. She's already been to Olympic development and all that, so everyone knew she was going to win, except Olivia. When Olivia got the medal placed around her neck, she was so humble and so filled with joy, and just, she embodies, I think, a lot of what we want to see our students achieve, not just the fact that it's a gold medal, but the fact that she's worked hard to get there, and she achieved it. And I was really, really impressed, not only with that, but the way the FHSAA ran the entire event. I've been to a ton of swim meets in my life, and this was by far the best run swim meet I've ever seen. They care about the kids, they know the coaches, they know the athletes, they know the schools, they know the histories of the programs at the schools, and we know how many schools there are in the state of Florida. So that's a lot of information to keep at their fingertips, and I was really impressed with the whole thing. And finally, we had a board meeting yesterday and Sunday, and I think there's something about board meetings in the state of Florida where the room in which the meeting is held has to be so cold that it makes you sick, because here I sit today sick, it wasn't just because of the cold, but seriously, it was freezing in there. That being said, this group that I'm working with there, the board is very invested in doing the right thing for student athletes, making sure the students are first, and doing the best thing for them. And the organization itself is also very much into making sure that things are done fairly, students are served first, and I feel like our student athletes here in Lee County, at a minimum, not to mention across the state of Florida, are in good hands with the FHSAA. So that's my report.
Great job. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Toiber?
I have nothing.
Okay, let's see. After our last board meeting, we had the Uncommon Friends Gala, and they honored several scholarship recipients, several here within our district, and I'm hoping that Ms. Fisher, we will work with whoever is the next chair to see if we can put them down for recognition for these high school students to come and just be recognized. Because these are students that are not necessarily, they come from a lot of difficulties, and they've had to prove themselves character-wise and ethically as to why they are worthy of these. And so they're worthy of honor. And also a shout out to Yvonne Caldwell, teacher leader at James Stevens. She is the champion teacher of the year with Uncommon Friends. If you've not had a chance to read the curriculum that has been developed in collaboration with the foundation and with our teachers and what's taught within the schools, it's really quite powerful, and it can make a very positive impact. Let's see, on the 3rd, I got to go to the Lehigh Riverdale Battle for the Bell football game, and Riverdale won the bell. So the bell is back at Riverdale it's been at Lehigh for a couple of years, and so they were quite thrilled at that game. And, you know, Lehigh was disappointed, but it was nice to be able to cheer for both teams. I did say I wanted to wear a shirt sewn with both, you know, but they didn't like that idea either. They wanted it to be just their shirt. But it was a good night, and what a wonderful thing to again see teams in support of each other. We are very blessed in Lake County for that. Had some very good meetings with 3 of our county commissioners so far. I have 2 more coming up. Some very positive dialogues, and so it was good. And then today when I met with Commissioner Manning, I was able to share with him something that a constituent shared with me over the weekend. And I said, I think the county can help us with this. You know, you've got that growth and incremental funding that you have now, and I said, boy, it would really be great for you to help us by providing some lights at those bus stops. Not only would it help us with our students that are waiting for bus stops early in the morning, but boy, it would also help with safety within the neighborhoods. So he said, that's up for discussion. So some very good conversations. Let's see. I wasn't going to bring it up, but yes, I had some kind of odd, very bad vertigo spell, and wound up at Lee Health. And I just have to tell you that Lee Health has the same growing pains that we do, because I was admitted into the maternity wing because they were overcrowded in every other room at Gulf Coast. So I guess the best thing was when they came in looking for a pump and they realized, oh, I probably wouldn't have one. But it was wonderful because I got to talk with people, and I don't necessarily, I want to hear what people are saying in one-on-one conversations, and I had some powerful conversations. And one of those was with a parent saying, I don't mind my kids getting up early to go to high school. That doesn't bother me, but I want to be able to leave them in a place that's lit. She said, if you could just find some way. And so from that conversation, so I was able to share it with Commissioner Manning today, but couldn't share that with Mr. Kiker or Mann because I met with them prior to it. But had some really powerful time with talking about all the wonderful things that are going on in our district, hearing them compliment us, hearing them ask questions. It was a very, hey, you turned it into something good. And so I just believe that everything is providential. And there was another thought. Lee Health, I have to give a shout out to Lee Health because every single one of their staff members were amazingly gracious and kind, just like every one of our members of our staff, no matter what department, no matter what school we go into, everyone is gracious and kind. I think we have a lot that we can collaborate and pat each other on the back for with Lee Health. And so thankfully, we figured out I'm okay. I just had vertigo. So that was a good thing. And I'm very thankful for health insurance and very blessed. Then I'm excited and looking forward to tomorrow's annual barbecue at Alba School. I don't know if anybody else is interested, but I'm sure Mr. Hodgson would love for you to come out. And it will be good. And our question about football games this weekend. Is the North Fort Myers the only one that's played here in Lake County?
They're playing Fort Myers.
Yeah.
Right, but and it's played here in Lake County. But are any other of our teams playing, or are they out of county?
I thought, I'll have to check on Dunbar.
Well, it doesn't matter,
I don't
but
know off the top of my head.
planning on going to that one.
Yeah.
I hope several of you come out and cheer both teams on.
Yeah. Buy your tickets early. They're expecting
Yes,
to sell out.
yes, yes. And that's all.
No, they don't
Well,
want
I have
that.
some comments, but it's 5 o'clock, so
Oh, I'm
I will
sorry.
save them for another time.
Okay. And with that, we shall go to Mr. Martin.
Yes, Dr. Cook, board
Save
members,
mine,
just
too.
one thing briefly, one point out from the subject that was raised in your board comment with respect to AEDs. There is Florida statute that requires that each public school that's a member of the FHSAA, Florida High School Athletic Association, have automated external defibrillator on the school grounds. There's also a requirement in the statute that employees are reasonably expected to use the device, receive training, including CPR and basic first aid training. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Atkins?
I'll hold my comments for another time.
Okay. Then this meeting is adjourned, and I do not believe we have a presentation or performance tonight, is that correct?
Oh, we do.
Thought we
She'll
do.
meet back at
Oh, we
6
do.
o'clock for our regular action meeting.
5:45 would you?
5:45.
Cape Elementary School, of course.
I apologize. If I had realized the time, I wouldn't have shared.
45.